Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I am doing a live session on YouTube today on August 5th. The markets have already opened. We're going to try something new on X Spaces with the video. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. We'll find out. And thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. We're going to go over the news. We're not going to do the telemetry of the market today, but we will cover the financial news and other news segments. I've been away for a little while, but we're going to be doing a few shows. So with that, please make sure you subscribe to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Make sure you subscribe to all those channels and you have the notification link activated. In addition, if you'd like to support my work, you can support it many different ways. You can support it by sharing the links, asking your social media to follow me on X, on GETTR. You can sign up for my WhatsApp group. Go to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee on my website. You can be a paid member to my Patreon channel. I do all these videos for free. I don't put stuff behind a paywall. If you would like to purchase the products that I offer, like my ebooks, my supplements, or even the course material that I developed in immunology and pulmonology, please do that to help support the work. Again, all this video content and audio content is for free. I have under broadcast on my website an archive of some of my shows in audio format, and you can also watch the live streaming on my website. I haven't set that up today. I will be shortly. So with that, let's go to the news.
Markets, headlines. Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Liz Mateo. Stocks holding near record highs. This is after a line of corporate results. Also traders, so they're waiting some fresh readings on U.S. services. That comes in just a few moments from now. Let's start with the S&P 500 up 0.1%, 11 points. The Dow up 0.2%, 118 points, and the Nasdaq up 0.2% or 47 points. The 2-year yield, 3.71%. That's up 3 basis points. The yield on the 10-year, 4.22%, and that's up 3 basis points. We have the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index, little change. To earnings we go. Sales at Yum Brands, they rose less than expected the latest quarter. Growth at Taco Bell, KFC, weaker than expected, and even Pizza Hut posted a 7th straight quarter of same-store sales declines. Its shares are down nearly 2%. Now, beer maker Molson Coors, they reported a beat on net sales for the second quarter. Its shares are up about 2.5%. And to travel, where shares of Marriott International, they were higher, just now ticking down about 0.1%. Its global footprint kind of made up for that softening U.S. demand. After the close, we move on to Rivian, Snap, AMD, Super Microcomputer. And finally, we now know where Linda Yaccarino's next move is after leaving Elon Musk X. Well, she's taken the helm at eMed. It's a telehealth company that sells weight loss drugs. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Tom.
Listen, Mateo, thanks so much. Down 122 points. A better tape off of the opening here. 11 minutes into the session, SPX up 12 points. VIX 17.36. The way we find guests here varies. Some are pitched to us, as you can imagine. Others, we search and search and search. We really use Bloomberg News articles. Our good competitors, the Financial Times, or that. The way I found Erica Grosjean was a paper in 2003 where there was an exceptionally mathematical 4-box scatter dot chart, which she followed up with the New York Fed with the second 4-box scatter dot chart. And it was just like Paul Newman and Robert Redford looking across the valley. Who are those guys? Who is this economist? Joining us now in the national uproar over how we count the beans. Definitive, Erica Grosjean. She's a former commissioner in the Bureau of Labor Statistics out of Madison and Harvard, and now with a shingle out at Cornell as well. Erica, who should the next BLS head listen to? How do you imagine BLS will go forward?
Well, I think the next BLS commissioner should follow in the steps of all of the preceding BLS commissioners. And that really starts with the very first BLS commissioner, Carol Wright. And we're talking about 1884. And I want to read you what he said about the commitment that he thought what was the BLS was making to the American people. He said BLS would be devoted to, and I quote, the fearless publication of the facts, without regard to the influence those facts may have upon any party's position or any partisan's views. That was 1884. And that, I think, is what we're looking for. Someone with the technical chops and the commitment that all the previous BLS commissioners have had.
Carol Wright served under Sheridan in the Shenandoah Valley in the Civil War, so I assume he knew how to shoot a rifle. Mm-hmm. This is, Erica Grosjean, this is a war of how we have counted data since at least 1947. People like you doing really grinding work week after week, month after month to count the beans of the economy. Is the data for the next jobs report believable?
Yes, because the acting commissioner at BLS is Bill Wyatrowski, and I chose him to be deputy commissioner when I was there. He has been acting commissioner twice already, in between my term and Bill Beach's term, and then between Bill Beach and Erica McIntyre. He's an excellent leader and just an A1 data nerd, just the kind of guy we need to continue things. And so I don't think anybody should worry about the quality of BLS data while he's at the helm.
Paul Wyatrowski out of the school. Erica's familiar with the school. It's south of Harvard. It's Yale.
Gotcha.
It's called
South.
Okay.
Erica, President Trump cited the poor quality coming out of the data of the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics. Can you comment on that? How is the quality of data today, and has it improved or deteriorated over the years?
That's a nuanced question. BLS has 25 programs, and it produces a lot of data. So I think you have two things going in opposite directions. One is that that BLS is
we're live streaming on YouTube, we're live streaming on YouTube, on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and on Spaces. Spaces, I'm doing something a little bit different. We have the audio version and the camera version. So with that, let's continue. I want to go with some of the news clips that have been coming in. So let's go to Fox Business at this moment.
Well, it's kind of a scam when you look at the actual numbers. Let's talk about it with Art Locklear, former Reagan economist, and Steve Moore, posted more money on WABC Radio. I'm looking at Steve. I'm looking at the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. 950% overstated, 630% overstated. And the other thing is, no one's responding to the surveys anymore. So this thing is all being done by faulty econometric models, so-called birth and death models of businesses and jobs. And it's time for an audit and a top-to-bottom change. Trump's being criticized. He's right here. He's absolutely right. I should think. I don't know. What do you say?
Yeah, look, under the Biden years, and they're still revising these numbers as we speak. Already, they've revised downward by about 1 million jobs, the numbers that had originally been reported. That's a big error, Larry and out there. And so they're just, it's like a blind man throwing at a dartboard right now. And then you've got the situation where, look, I've been doing Maria's show in the morning when that jobs report comes out on that first Friday every month. Probably for 10 years. I've never seen anything like that report that came out on Friday. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Those revisions are gigantic. There is something seriously wrong with the way we're doing this. And look, the jobs report is maybe the most important economic indicator report we get every month. So we got to make sure it's accurate, and right now it's not. I'm losing faith in those numbers.
Well, look, first of all, let's put another plug in for Maria's great show in the morning. I'm glad you're doing that. Arthur, let me come to you. I mean, I'm looking at this thing. Steve's is from the Unleash Prosperity. Establishment surveys, unit response rates have collapsed in the last 10 years. Now, especially, yes, due to COVID, and since COVID, it stayed at the bottom. But the response rate used to be 60%, and it's now dropped to less than 45%. So, Art, the point is, you're going to put in a new BLS commissioner. He or she probably will do an audit, shake up the staff. They're going to have to find new methodologies, Arthur. And, you know, you're a smart guy. What do you think they ought to do?
Well, I was very involved with this, as you were, Larry, long ago and far away. You know, I was the first chief economist at the OMB, and you were the chief economist 10 years later there. And these numbers are absolutely critical, and they should be reviewed all the time. And, you know, when you get something like COVID coming in and you've got automatic seasonal adjustments, the COVID can't handle the seasonal adjustments correctly. You need a thorough review and analysis of these programs. We do rely on these data very, very much. I doubt very much that anyone deliberately in the departments or agencies, I just hope they didn't deliberately fudge the numbers. I can't imagine they did that. But in these types of turmoil, we really need to rely on these types of numbers, and therefore we need to have them as accurate as possible. And a good review committee would be really special. And I think that's what we need to do.
Actually, that's a good point. But the other thing is this birth and death model, which is so flawed. All that means is the birth of new businesses and jobs and the death of old businesses and jobs. Some months, many months, that's the biggest factor in the entire jobs report.
Yeah.
And it's a flawed econometric model. Yeah. And I think they ought to junk it. Steve, you're nodding your head. I agree. I mean, I just think that there's got to be a better way. Okay. Another thing Mr. President Trump talked about was this Federal Reserve situation. We're going to play some tape on that. Take a listen, fellas.
I have a couple of people in mind. I'll be announcing somebody for the filling of the person that left. A woman left, as you know, who is I guess a Biden appointment. And I think she left because she agreed with me on interest rates, and yet they were on the other side of the ballpark, right? So I'll be announcing that probably over the next couple of days.
All right, next couple of days. I left her among the candidates. Actually, there's two choices here. One is he can appoint somebody to this open seat and name that person as his new chairman. I know it wouldn't take effect until May, but it sure would shake up the musical chairs at the Fed, kind of undermine Jay Powell. Or he could just appoint somebody for 4 or 5 months and then wait until Mr. Powell leaves as chair next May. And tell me your thinking on this point, please.
Well, I think he should appoint the person who's going to make chairman as soon as possible, and that would be filling up this temporary and then go to the peripheral. Larry, as you know, I really don't think the Fed should be independent. I don't think the Defense Department should be independent or the Treasury should be independent. I mean, the Fed is part of the administration and it should be run by the administration, and an independent Fed just causes all sorts of problems. The president's going to be blamed for a good, bad economy and going to be credited for a good economy. He should have all the levers possible under his control that contribute to that economy. And he needs to have control of the Fed as soon as he takes office. And I'm just sorry, these independent Fedders are just wrong. I think this is part of the government, part of the administration, and should be there. And he should have control of it right away.
That's a very interesting point of view. Steve Moore, what's your tip? Arthur says president should put somebody in there and name that person to be the chair. They fill in another spot later on. And the Federal Reserve shouldn't be, you know, I always say it's independent, but it's not separate from the planet Earth, for heaven's sakes. It is part of the government. Steve Moore, what's your take on this?
Well, I guess
if you're a man who makes at least 150K a year and you feel self-conscious about your gut sticking out, I'll get you shredded or you won't pay a dime. I'm talking Chris.
Well, I'll make a serious point, which is two of Donald Trump's favorite economists in the whole world are on the screen with me right now. you and Arthur, and I think one of the two of you would be an excellent venture, and I mean that sincerely. But if Kevin Hassett gets it, I'm great with that. Kevin Warsh, I'm great with that. I mean, a lot of good choices to be made here. But you guys go at the Reagan years, and Paul Volcker used to always say, I couldn't have done it without Reagan. Paul Volcker is the guy who extinguished inflation when we had, 11% inflation under Jimmy Carter. And Reagan was with them the whole way. And to restore the value of the dollar and the soundness of our currency, that's exactly what we need right now.
So basically, you're agreeing with Art. Okay, the Fed is not all that independent. And Art, you make it's a good point. Presidents will live and die. If they appoint somebody bad at the Fed, it will cost them politically. That's right. If someone who permits high inflation, which would breed high unemployment. If they appoint a sound money person with low inflation and low unemployment, they'll take the credit. So you're saying presidents have incentives to appoint the best possible person.
Yeah, you want to align authority with responsibility. You just have to do that. And I remember the last segment, Larry, you mentioned the three people, Hassett, and Warsh, and you said you didn't want to make a choice in that. I'd like to weigh in on that if I could, just a little bit. We've got Kevin Hassett in a perfect position. He's the best guy, except for the predecessor, where he's tied with that predecessor as chairman, head of the NEC. And he's really good there. He's got the president's ear all the time. Why take him away from that job? Scott Bessent, you don't get a better secretary of the treasury than that. I think bringing in Kevin Warsh would make that troika, that triumphant troika, phenomenal. So I'm really in favor of Kevin Warsh coming in. He's great. He really understands the price rule. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying we're running out of time. The president is watching this show, and I'm glad you've given him sound advice. And I'll leave it there. We're all pals and we're all good friends. Steve Moore, thank you. And Arthur Laffer, thank you. Very, very interesting.
All right, we're going to go to Tim Geithner on tariff impact. Now, what I have found with many people, and I don't know what Tim Geithner is going to say about this, but many economists, many individuals in the know with the Federal Reserve, and Tim Geithner is one of them. For the ones that don't know, Tim Geithner was instrumental in that transition during Lehman. All right. So, but many of these experts, they say, oh, the tariffs are going to tank the economy, the tariffs are going to destroy, and it hasn't happened. Oh, unemployment rate is going to skyrocket, inflation is going to go to the moon. It didn't happen. It just didn't happen. So many of these experts have failed in telling the public on what was going to happen. And I'm talking about when the tariffs were announced in April. So it's now April, May, June, July. We're now in August, right? So they had 4 full months. And these economists have failed in explaining what was going to happen to the economy. So we'll listen to Tim Geithner. I'm not sure what he's going to say here. Just to remind the audience, we're live streaming on YouTube on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and we're simulcasting on X Spaces in audio format and in video format. I'm doing an experiment with the video. It's a little bit, for me to do the show this way, is a little discombobulated. I'm not sure if I'll continue that video part of Spaces, but we'll see how this turns out. Please help support the work that I do by purchasing the great products that I offer. All right. If you follow the protocol that I have, you will get into shape. You will slow down the aging process. You'll have more vitality. I have products that are very high quality that I take every day to improve my health and wellness. Now, what are some of those products? For example, the probiotic powdered version, you mix it with soft foods, filtered water, or just milk, but I just mix it with hummus, which is soft food. Take it every day. And by doing that, you're going to improve your gut biome. By improving your gut biome, you're going to bring down inflammation at the gut level. You're going to improve your immune system. You're going to improve the thickness of the mucosal lining of the inner lining of your gut. And you're going to be able to sleep better. You're going to have better communication between your gut and your brain. You're going to be able to digest your foods better. You're reducing the chances of leaky gut. And also, you're improving your metabolism. You're improving the communication between your gut and your liver. So it's really important to take a good probiotic every day. It's a very important foundational piece. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotic. Another great product that I have is Clarity Factor. Clarity Factor is going to help you concentrate on the tasks at work or at school or at home. This is very important to take every day, no matter what your age is. So by taking this every day, what you're going to notice is that you're going to be able to concentrate. You're going to have those neurons firing. And when you create a microenvironment that is repetitive, that is continuous, then what will happen is that your dendritic connections are going to connect better. You'll have positive neuroplasticity. By doing that, you're going to think faster, you're going to have better memory, you're going to be able to concentrate. See, the problem that you're going to see in the next 5 years with many people in your social setting, family members, friends, you're going to start seeing people having cognitive decline. And cognitive decline or neurological decline is going to manifest in multiple ways. One is the cognitive decline aspect of it, of neurological decline, and also mobility. So with the cognitive decline, you're going to start seeing people having a hard time remembering, having a hard time creating set structure, writing. Some people will just kind of look like they're in a fog. The other side of the neurological decline is gait issues, walking issues, balancing issues. These all can be mitigated by improving your neuroplasticity. Now, when you improve that neuroplasticity with Clarity Factor, that's going to help with the cognitive function. You're going to be able to improve your memory. You're going to think faster. You're going to be able to concentrate. So it's important to take it every day. But you need to do other routines that help with cognitive function. And part of that is resistance training, cardiovascular training, stretching, and balancing. Now, why are those 4 modalities of exercise important for neurological health? By getting better blood flow to your brain, you're going to have the micronutrients that you need for that neuroplasticity and to maintain those neurons. By doing resistance training, you're activating your muscles and stimulating those neurons that activate those muscles. By doing balancing exercises, you're activating your cerebellum and getting that in a healthier state. So in your later years, you're going to be able to have better balancing and better gait, walking performance. Stretching, really important. That stretches the muscle. It allows for flexibility. But by doing that, you're activating a different type of neuron. You have neurons that are attached to the ends of your muscle, and you have neurons that are attached more closer to the center of the muscle. So you're activating different neurons. So it's really important to do these a health protocol. The health protocol is supplementation and other aspects of health and wellness, like proper exercise, proper diet. So it's really important. So Clarity Factor is going to help with those dendritic connections, allow you to think faster. You're going to have better memory. And when you couple that with proper diet, proper exercise, proper sleep, you're going to improve your neurological function. So don't think that neurological function is just cognitive. It's not. Neurological function is also in terms of modality, in terms of mobile, the ability of movement, your kinetics, your kinematics. All right, so it's really important. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take my advice, it works. Get the clarity factor, help with speeding up that thinking process, focusing, and improving your memory. But couple it with exercise and proper diet. By doing that, you're going to help those neurons be able to improve activating muscle, balancing your body, stretching your body. All those are very important. It's not just for muscle. It's not just for your ligaments and your tendons, but it's also for your cerebellum. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
Hello, my name is Adam Ferrari, Chief Executive Officer of Phoenix Energy. I look forward to you joining us at our next investor webinar where you can drill deeper.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. We are in Aspen, Colorado this morning with two former Treasury Secretaries who are the co-chairs of the Aspen Economic Group. Good morning to you. Hank Paulson is here. Tim Geithner is here. We just spoke to the president. Lots of questions about where our economy is today, what's going on with the tariffs, how you think about all this geopolitically, treasuries and everything, geopolitics, China. So I want to get to as much of this as we can. I just want to start, though, with where you think the economy actually is and how much you think the tariffs thus far are either impacting things or not. And just what your reaction is even to what the president was saying, given his real excitement about those tariffs and all of the money he says he's getting from all of these other countries.
So I think the economy, Andrew, you've got to start by saying our economy is amazingly resilient. Amazingly.
Right. Just the backstory on Hank Paulson and Geithner during the Lehman crisis. Hank Paulson was the Treasury Secretary, and Geithner was a Federal Reserve governor at the New York Fed. Right? He was the head of the New York Federal Reserve because they have different branches. So that and then once Obama came into office, Geithner ended up becoming the Treasury Secretary. Now Paulson is from Goldman Sachs. Now this is all happening during George Bush Jr.'s presidency when Lehman happened, right? And then the transition team carried over to Obama's administration. Now, before George Bush Jr. and Lehman, there was this move within politics to try to weaken the dollar. All right. And the Treasury secretaries were, this is before Rubin. Rubin was the Treasury Secretary. If you remember, Rubin was traveling around with Bono all the time. All right, that was during that time period. All right. Now, before Rubin, there was this desire to try to weaken the dollar. And the idea was by weakening the dollar, you'd be able to have better exports, right? But what happened was the markets had a fit, and there were bond vigilantes that were taking place. Now, if you remember, James Carville ran Bill Clinton's campaign or campaigns. I think he ran both of them. James Carville said that if he was to be reincarnated, he wanted to be the bond market or a bond trader. So during this period of time, during Clinton's first term, the first half of his first term, he was a bit of a progressive, but then he ended becoming a centrist. So there was this push to actually weaken the dollar. Well, what happened was the markets had a fit, and Rubin comes in. I believe Rubin was running. I think he's also a Goldman Sachs guy. I'm not sure. But what happened was he pushed for a strong dollar. And by pushing for a strong dollar, the bond vigilantes went away, the market started to rally, and because of tech, we had this big boom in the United States economy with IT technology during the Clinton administration. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is that Hank and Geithner were at the tail end of this pendulum that was swinging, where you had a group of people in politics in Washington that wanted to weaken the dollar, and then they strengthened it. There was a big boom in the economy, but with that also led to NAFTA, globalization on steroids, 35 years of this, right? And then now with Trump, there is this pendulum is coming back to swing with tariffs, with weakening the dollar, with lowering rates. All right, so I just wanted to give you, there's a long arc here going all the way back to pre-Clinton days. It's like almost like during the Bush Senior, all right, days. There's this long arc. Bush Senior, Clinton, Bush Jr., Obama, right? So, and then Trump, Biden, and Trump again. There's this long arc of this weak dollar, strong dollar, and then trying to weaken the dollar again. So Hank Paulson was a Treasury Secretary under George Bush Jr. Geithner was one of the governors at the Federal Reserve in New York. Okay, he was the head guy in the New York Fed. So all this happens during Lehman, and they're the ones that decided to let Lehman blow up. All right. Now, once Obama comes in, Hank steps aside. Now remember, Hank's Goldman Sachs, all right? And Geithner comes in as Treasury Secretary. Okay. So that's a little bit of a broad brush of a little bit of the history of this. So now remember, we're talking about tariffs and how it will affect the economy. But it's in the backdrop of weakening of the dollar and this long arc going all the way back to Clinton, or if you want to move it even farther back, going all the way back to George Bush Sr.
Oh, yeah. It's been the bright spot in the world since 2020. So just think about what we've been through. The financial crisis, multi-year pandemic, shifting economic policies. And yet, if you go back to 2020, we've grown 3 times the rate of the rest of the G7. We've had output 40% higher than Germany, Canada, and so on. And we have got the strongest private sector. So I start there. Then in terms of what's going on with the economy, tariffs, etc., let me tell you, it's going to take a while to determine that. It looks like things have slowed down a lot, okay, in terms of manufacturing jobs and in terms of job creation. But there's so much going on, right? Look at everything that's going on right now. It's amazing. And it's going to take a while to work its way through the system. So we've got, as you said, we've got tariffs, we've got tax cuts, we've got the impact of AI. That's going to take a while for us to determine.
Where do you land on tariffs?
I mean, tariffs are a bad tax. They're like a corrosive tax on American manufacturers. They're aggressive in their impact. We don't know where they're going to settle out yet. You still don't have, where China's going to settle out, where India's going to settle out. You know what the relative changes are going to be. So you don't know yet what the broad impact on supply chains is going to be. But it's a shock. It's a hit that the U.S. economy can withstand. It'll be meaningful, but not enough to break this pretty strong economy. We're an economy that's very hard to break, and we've got a whole bunch of things happening in the American economy that are a source of strong investment demand, innovation, and things like that. And so it'll be hard. Hank's right. It'll be hard to figure out how hard to.
This is and I've been saying this even through the previous show, all right, with Warpath. But this show is now called Yard Wars, and if you want to know why I called it Yard Wars, watch the first episode. But there are multiple variables here. And tariffs, yes, on the surface, as a textbook, you can look at these things in textbook kind of ways, but in reality, there's more feedback loops, so the textbook doesn't really capture it all. But in a textbook way of looking at this, tariffs will increase the cost of what you produce when you import. Let me rephrase that. Tariffs will increase the cost of what you import. All right. It also has a feedback loop. And that feedback loop, for how it transmits to the consumer, it's not necessarily true that all of the tariff goes to the consumer. Because of competition, because of margins, some of it gets absorbed by the manufacturer in the foreign country. Some of it is absorbed by the company that is importing it and selling it to the consumer. And some of it will be absorbed by the consumer. It's not necessarily true that all of it will transmit as a price increase. Some goods more than others. But in the aggregate of the economy, it hasn't happened. In addition, it's a source of revenue. All right? If you go back all the way back to the Civil War days, all right, and even during the late 1800s, early 1900s, tariffs were a means as gaining revenue for the government. So there's different ways that the government can get revenue. Issue a bond, and it's taking out a loan, so it's issuing debt, increasing taxes, or tariffs. So if you say that tariffs are is a regressive tax, right? Well, then you're also saying that taxes are a problem too, right? Or debt is a problem too. So if someone's saying, oh, tariffs are super bad, well, maybe taxes are super bad too. So that's another way of looking at it. But there are many variables involved in the economy. So by having tariffs, and some of that price increase transmits into the economy, the end user pays a certain percentage of it, not the whole thing in most cases. In some products, it's going to be more absorbed by the consumer. In other products, it's going to be less absorbed. It depends on what the competition is. But it's also a signal for manufacturers to produce domestically. It's an incentive. So if you have less regulation, more tariffs on imports, and incentive to build businesses domestically, then you will help to build the economic cluster that was shipped away during the Clinton years and beyond. All right, so this is a transitional point in American economy. So we build our economic clusters. Now, it is true that our economy is pretty robust. Case in point, look at the economy. It withstand Lehman, even though it came close to, having a lot of turmoil. It withstand the Great Depression. It withstand the dot-com bubble. It withstand Lehman. It withstand COVID. The economy is pretty robust in the United States. All right, so the tariffs aren't going to take it down. If those other things that I just mentioned didn't take down the economy, tariffs are going to take down the economy. So a lot of these experts were just wrong on how tariffs were going to cause disruption in the economy. Now, what is different compared to other epochs is AI. I'm worried about AI and how the decoupling of labor and capital may lead to more unemployment. But that's not because of tariffs. That's because of this fast-paced adoption of AI within corporate, where corporate will think that they can replace people, reduce hiring. Many people that are trying to get their first job out of college, they're having a hard time. And they're coming from good schools and good degrees. It's not like just a good school with a humanities degree. These are good schools with a good degree. So AI, that's a different story. And we need to really think about it. Unfortunately, consumers, the average person's using AI all the time now, not realizing by feeding the AI, it may be taking your job away. So in terms of tariffs, it's a multivariable problem where you have different dynamics and different feedbacks, and the economy is robust enough to absorb it. Now, it would be nice if we had all this settled, because the market gyrations that are happening in the equity market are due to the jawboning of the administration. Now, if Trump stopped that, then there would be a little bit more stability within the equity market, and the wall of worry would continue upward to about 7,000 for the S&P 500. But I still have a target of 6,800 for the S&P 500 by year end, maybe even 7,000. But it really depends on how much jawboning takes place within the White House. But the real economy, not the stock market, but the real economy is pretty robust. Now, is there a little bit of slowdown? Probably. There's probably a little bit of slowdown, but that's not because of tariffs.
The ultimate effect until we see where they settle out. But it's like rust. It's corrosive, hard to reverse, and the effects.
And you say accumulate and corrosive in what way?
Because they raise the costs of inputs to manufacturers, and they are a hit to real income. So the average American.
But it doesn't taxes do that too? If tariffs do that, doesn't taxes? So why don't we just cut the taxes and allow for those inputs, those cost inputs to go down for manufacturing? Now, what it is that the tariffs are a political tool. It's not just to create revenue for the government, which it is, but it's a political tool to have an even playing field. Do we have free trade right now? No. We have skewed trade. We have trading partners that want to keep the labor arbitrage, to keep their industry in their country, and we just keep on importing their goods. Now, that doesn't make us robust, especially if we go to war. So it's really important to build the economic cluster. But if our kids, the next generation, can't get good jobs, how is our Social Security going to be supported? How will the economy in our later years in life be supported if you don't have the young getting plugged into the economy? Again, this is back to AI, but over-regulation, over-taxation. So you can make the argument that any tax does the same thing with tariffs. But tariffs is something a little bit more unique. And that is that it is a political tool to allow a politician to go to trading partners overseas to try to lower their tariff barriers or lower their barriers of entry. Because we're having problems selling goods into their country. Why? One, because we have a strong dollar. And two, they have barriers. Well, you slap a tariff on them, and then they start realizing, well, maybe they should reduce the barriers. So it's an important tool. It's a political tool. It brings in revenue. But does it bring in higher costs? Yeah, a little bit. But so does any tax. So, and if you bring back industry domestically, you build up an economic cluster, and your debt to GDP ratio is going to be lower, and most likely you're going to have more of a robust economy. So you can't just look at this just from a tariff point of view. It's you got to look at it in a holistic fashion. It's hard to do in a 5-minute clip. You can't do it in a 5-minute clip. But there's multiple variables moving at the same time, and they affect each other. There's a feedback on these variables.
They have that basic effect. You can't escape. And the long-term challenge for us, of course, is they will raise revenue. You don't know how much revenue they're going to raise, and we're a country living on the future, borrowing from the future, huge, unsustainable long-term deficits, and that revenue is going to prove to be a very valuable thing in our banking system as we get through this. It's hard to be able to give that up. So, most people would say it's a bad form of tax, even though they know taxes need to go up. And it's going to be hard to get the political system to figure out a way to clean up and reform that legacy of tariffs, because they're gonna find that revenue so attractive.
Do you believe the market thinks the tariffs are really here or not? I mean, do you think it's baked into what the market actually thinks?
Yeah. Who knows what the market thinks? But I will tell you, there's no real permanence to it, right? Because they could change tomorrow. The administration could change it. Our counterparties could. So there's not a real permanence. The thing that I dislike the most about tariffs are, I don't like to prop up inefficient industries, right? We saw that in the 70s when we had tariffs that protected our auto industry, and it really fell way behind. I don't like it when they prop up companies of the past, and hold back companies in the future. But as Tim said, they raised a lot of revenue, right? And I think it's worth really studying the impact of that. Now, I think the thing that I dislike the most is that they're uneven, right? And so they're uneven, they punish some, they benefit other. I'm talking about within
Tariffs, but you just said tariffs are good for bringing in revenue. Just like taxes, bringing revenue for the government. See, free traders, globalists, they don't want tariffs because that creates too much friction. All right? But the thing is, we don't really have free trade. So you have our trading partners creating barriers of entry. We have barriers of entry too. So we have the same problem because there's subsidies of certain industries and blah, blah, blah. But he just came out of Hank Paulson's mouth. Tariffs are going to be a good revenue stream.
money. And so they create distortions which have an adverse impact. They can have an adverse impact.
Why is Amazon paying me $63,000 a month? Well, I didn't make this kind of money selling yoga mats and toasters, and
If he's making that much money a month, why the hell is he doing the commercial about it on YouTube? Wouldn't he just shut up? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the magnesium and zinc. Magnesium and zinc is a dual purpose supplement that you should be taking every day. Magnesium helps brain function. We were talking about brain function. In 5 years, you're going to see a lot of people having cognitive decline and motor issues. Magnesium is going to help with brain function. Also, magnesium increases the efficacy of vitamin D3. Magnesium and zinc boosts up the immune system. So taking magnesium and zinc is very important for your overall health and vitality. And it's part of my anti-aging protocol. In addition, nattokinase. Nattokinase is really important to help bring down LDL levels, increase your HDL levels, and it's fibrinolytic, so it's going to help to break up clots. So if you're having problems with, let's say, a high level of total cholesterol, and you need to bring down those levels, instead of taking some of the pharmacopoeia that's out there, like statins, try this. Take CoQ10, take red yeast rice supplements, and taking nattokinase in larger concentrations, in larger doses. And by doing that over a 6-month period and doing exercising, cardiovascular exercise, resistance training, staying away from sugars, what you're going to notice is that your high cholesterol numbers are going to start to go down. And I just told you a natural way to do it, instead of all the side effects with pharmacopoeia. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the nattokinase. Another great supplement that I have, if you're 40 years of age or older, or you're an athlete, taking Myotrol. Myotrol helps with the gene expression to build muscle. It also helps with the health of the mitochondria. Mitochondria need lots of ATP. Mitochondria creates the ATP to build the muscle and to maintain the muscle. So by doing resistance training, building muscle, taking Myotrol to help with the gene expression to build the muscle and maintain the muscle will help you with your musculature, especially if you're age 40 or older. Now, the reason why it's harder to build muscle when you get older is that your genes start to methylate as you get older. And by methylating the genes, certain genes are turned off or the expression goes down. And that's what's happening with most people when they turn about 40. Is that they can't produce muscle as easy compared to when they were in their 20s. So it's important to take supplementation to allow you to build that muscle. This is for males and females. And if you're an athlete, younger or older, you'd benefit from Myotrol also. Now, if you stack this with Gladiator Barley and Boomer Boost and do the resistance training, you'll notice that you'll be able to build muscle even quicker. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. This is a very high quality product. And if you're 40 years of age or older, male or female, you need to be taking this now and do some resistance training. You don't have to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, but if you follow my advice, you're going to build muscle. But not just that, when you're building that muscle, you're improving the density of your bone structure. And again, you're activating certain neurons. And by doing that, you're slowing down that aging process, right? And you're going to have more vitality. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the nattokinase, the Myotrol, and the magnesium and zinc. Help with your immune system, help with your muscles, and help with your cardiovascular system. A great stack. And the idea is to stack these, stack them together. And by doing that, you're targeting multiple systems. Do that every day, and you're going to slowly improve your health and wellness. It's also about proper diet and exercise and proper sleep. Super important. So please go to my store. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. All right, let's see what else is going on in the news. All right, let's listen to General Keane predicting where the Israeli war is heading.
If you haven't exercised in years, you have to start small with my beginner-friendly Tai Chi class. 3 reasons every man over 40 should start doing.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reportedly approving a plan for the Israeli Defense Forces to fully occupy Gaza, forcing Hamas to release the remaining hostages that are still in their grasp. A source telling a prominent Israeli journalist, quote, Hamas will not release hostages without total surrender. If we do not operate now, the hostages will die of starvation, and Gaza will stay under Hamas's control. The mandate for a deal was broad, but we did not get agreement, so we will go for occupation. The Israeli military fully controls nearly 75% of the Gaza Strip. The expansion would allow the IDF to conduct operations where they believe the hostages are currently being held. Hamas released harrowing footage of an emaciated Israeli hostage that was inside Gaza over the weekend, drawing international criticism and outrage in Israel. I want to bring in Fox News strategic analyst and chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Key. General, this is quite a turn if the cabinet votes to fully occupy Gaza. It sounds to me, and I can't wait to get your thoughts on this, that they realize that there is no world in where Hamas has any control left in Gaza, and they're ready to move.
Well, there's a vast amount of frustration here on the part of the Israelis and also, the United States, because we've been partnered with the Israelis in these negotiations with Hamas, through Qatar. I mean, the reality is after many, many, many weeks of negotiations to try to get that 60-day ceasefire, hostage exchange for prisoners and detainees, despite Israeli concessions, one after the other, Hamas still said no, no, no. So Israel is throwing up their hands here, and so is the United States. The United States leadership is very frustrated. There's a recognition that it's unlikely to get a temporary ceasefire and hostage release, that it's more likely to negotiate at some point an end of war strategy to get all the hostages out at the same time. But to do that, and the Israelis have concluded that they have to put more pressure on Hamas to do that. And likely the pressure that's already been there's been nothing forthcoming. So that's what this really is all about. It's not a permanent occupation of Gaza. Certainly Israel doesn't want that, can't afford to do that. I mean, the IDF is a very small military, and certainly that would extend them quite a bit. This is about putting a pressure point on Hamas to get a final deal done. And a lot of the people would be asked to move to the south. Most of them had moved to the south and to the coast to get them out of the area of the conflict operation. There is danger involved here because the Israelis have tried to stay away from the areas where the hostages are. And not too surprising, Hamas has concentrated a lot of their forces in that area. So to be able to go in there and occupy and also not put the hostages' lives in danger is going to be a challenging operation for the Israelis. They're highly skilled at doing this, but this is where they are. I mean, they're frustrated, and so is our administration in dealing with Hamas here. That's produced the results that you just announced.
Well, and obviously the fear is that they will execute the hostages. There's 20 remaining living hostages, and that is a very valid fear, and that's got to be torture for those families that just had to approve the release of that video from Hamas. I mean, there's another question on this. It seems that Hamas is starving their own people. We've had so many reports of Hamas taking these aid trucks. Of course, Hamas says that's not true. But what about the international story in all of this? How do you think the Europeans are going to react to this? How do you think countries that have just recently come out and said there should be a Palestinian state, there should be a Palestine? I mean, what is this going to do you think, in the world order? Because there's certainly going to be blowback against the U.S. and certainly blowback against the Israelis for all of this. How do you think that plays out?
Well, I think the international community will react strongly against anything that's in their minds protracting the war. And the reason why the war is being protracted is because Hamas will not make a deal to release the hostages in exchange for prisoners and some other concessions as well. I mean, that's where we are. But Israel gets blamed regardless. The food issue, certainly there are some issues there with food distribution. That's indisputable. But to blame Israel for all of that, I mean, it's unprecedented in the history of warfare that a state whose enemy population is having challenges that state who's trying to defeat the military force that's governing that population reaches out and provides aid and food to that population. That's what Israel has been doing since 2 weeks after the war began on October the 7th. That's unprecedented. But yet they get blamed for not doing it well enough. They get blamed for the fact that Hamas steals some of the food and it doesn't reach the end state, which is to the people. So listen, the propaganda theme that Hamas has had its success. There's no doubt about that. And it's unfortunate that the international community doesn't pin the rose where it should be on Hamas. The United States is standing up and speaking publicly about this and trying to lay the blame where it should be put, and that is on Hamas. And look at the Arab states. The Arab states, I mean, Cheryl, they want Hamas gone. They know there is no future stability with Hamas still controlling Gaza and inflicting the kind of horror that they have imposed on their own people, much less what they did to the Israelis on October the 7th. So they are in a place where they want this war to end. And I think the new predicate among the Arabs is not a pathway to a Palestinian state. They know that's pretty much off the table, given what happened on October the 7th. It's an end of war in Gaza and a recovery of Gaza. And then that may be a pathway to normalization with the Israelis, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the other Arab states as well. That process is still out there as a realistic political objective.
And before you go, General, just real quick, I mean, we should remind our viewers that there is video of Hamas operatives, soldiers that are celebrating and eating, and they look very well fed. And they're eating all this food and laughing. That video just was out within the last 2 weeks. So this isn't, but it just seems to me that, to your point, that Hamas, the negotiations are over. And there is no world in where Hamas can stay. I think the question now is what happens with the West Bank. Real quick before you go.
Well, certainly the West Bank still is an issue in terms of stability and security that has to be provided there. Where this is heading, likely it'll still result in some kind of negotiations at the end. But that pressure point is going to have to be applied to Hamas to get there. That's the path we're on. It's unfortunate that it has come to this, but the reality is we always knew from the beginning Hamas took the hostages in the numbers they did to guarantee their own survival. And that is where we are. The fact that they would kill the hostages, if they did that, and the Israelis were aware that that actually took place, then that would unleash something completely different on Hamas than what they're going to experience here. Because then there would be no restraint on the Israelis whatsoever. So the deal for Hamas is keep those hostages alive to guarantee their own survival at the end of this. They just believe that they can get much better terms because of the international pressure that is being put on the Israelis and how Hamas has fed the propaganda themes to contribute to that pressure. They're going to continue down that path because they believe it has achieved some success for them. And they're right about it.
General Jack King, thank you so much for being here on what could be a big turning point in the Israel-Hamas war.
All right, the next video that we're going to be talking about is how AI is causing a white-collar bloodbath. Now, I haven't seen this video, so hopefully it's going to be all right. But let's take a look at this.
This is the premium Garmin Duffel 45 liter by Half Day. It's a transforming 2-in-1 travel duffel bag for long weekends, weddings, and business trips.
The job market is changing faster than ever. According to a study by the World Economic Forum, nearly a quarter of all current professions will change in the next 5 years due to AI.
Half of entry-level white-collar jobs disappearing and 10 to 20% unemployment in the next 1 to 5 years.
The tech sector is already being hit, but this will spread to many other sectors of the labor economy.
Tech has already been hit, and other industries are just months away from massive cuts.
Even the CEOs of the largest AI companies in the United States are warning about the potential consequences.
CEO
of an artificial intelligence company warns that AI is about to wipe out millions of jobs in the next few years, even calling it a bloodbath.
The effects of this labor revolution could bring significant consequences, potentially leading to unemployment rates never seen before.
It's not just tech. The CEO of a major AI company says could wipe out half of all the white-collar starter jobs, possibly causing unemployment to soar as high as 20%.
So how could AI eliminate nearly half of all white-collar jobs? The accelerated advancement of artificial intelligence is transforming the global job market in unprecedented ways. What was once limited to repetitive manual tasks or data processing has now evolved into tools capable of executing complex cognitive functions that were historically the responsibility of entry-level administrative workers.
Use cases for AI continue to grow. There is one industry leaning hard into the technology: customer support.
A report by McKinsey & Company estimated that generative AI could automate activities that currently represent between 60 and 70% of the working time in certain office occupations. The most vulnerable positions are those focused on routine information processing, rather than human judgment, empathy, or interpersonal skills. For example, in the customer service area, AI-powered chatbots already handle more than 85% of first-level support requests in large tech companies, up from 30% in 2020. Similarly, law firms are using tools like case text to conduct legal research and draft contracts in minutes, tasks that previously took a junior lawyer hours.
At a fraction of the cost of a human lawyer, Router says he is able to use his software to help everyday Americans battle legal issues, such as traffic tickets and evictions. So far, he says his company has helped in more than 1.5 million cases and saved his clients millions of dollars.
A report by the World Economic Forum projected that by 2027, approximately 83 million jobs could be lost globally due to AI and automation. Most concerning is that the majority of eliminated jobs are entry-level or junior roles. Likewise, Goldman Sachs estimated that 300 million full-time jobs could be affected by generative AI, with a greater impact in developed economies due to their reliance on office work. In the US, the report identified that up to 46% of tasks performed by entry-level employees could be automated in the next decade. In concrete terms, if these projections are fulfilled, between 10 and 12 million entry-level office jobs could disappear in the US alone, considering the current size of the administrative workforce. And the behavior of large companies in 2024 and 2025 reflects this transformation.
Right, the layoffs that are rippling through the tech industry aren't showing any signs of easing. IBM is the latest tech giant to do so. The company announced it will cut about 3,900 jobs, mainly in its IT services segment.
Companies like IBM, Deloitte, and Accenture have announced pauses or significant reductions in junior-level hiring. The CEO of IBM stated that the company planned to halt hiring in roles that could be replaced by AI, especially in human resources and administrative support. These roles represented about 26,000 employees within the company. Similarly, Accenture announced in its 2024 fiscal report the cut of 19,000 jobs, mainly among non-billable and entry-level staff, while increasing its investment in training and deploying generative AI. Even in sectors like finance and marketing, junior analysts are being replaced by AI tools that offer faster, cheaper, and more scalable solutions. The collapse of entry-level jobs has also affected internships and training programs, which have traditionally served as gateways to the professional market. According to the National Association of Colleges and Employers, the number of internship offers from Fortune 500 companies dropped by 22% between 2022 and 2024. In the tech sector, the decline was even greater, around 34%.
A blunt new warning for American workers. A tech CEO says artificial intelligence is about to wipe out millions of jobs.
This decline is directly related to the growing use of AI in internal processes. Companies are finding that young workers, once essential for tasks like transcription, data labeling, or content moderation, are no longer indispensable. As a result, fewer and fewer graduates gain the experience needed to advance to intermediate positions, creating bottlenecks in long-term professional development. In addition to eliminating jobs, AI is also contributing to wage stagnation in administrative roles. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, real wage growth in entry-level professional jobs fell by 1.8% in 2024, in contrast to a 2.4% increase across the overall economy. This stagnation is partly due to the oversupply of candidates competing for an ever-shrinking number of openings, as well as the corporate preference for AI-based solutions.
Many young people across the country are finding it difficult to find summertime work.
The labor market also posing a big challenge for young people looking for a summer job. A new report suggests there's been a steep decline in the number of temporary jobs available.
Economists also warn of a growing polarization of the labor market. While advanced technical and executive positions remain in high demand, and low-wage service jobs persist due to their physical or interpersonal nature, the middle tier, traditionally filled by young college graduates, is disappearing. AI is not only increasing human productivity, it is directly replacing it. Whereas previous waves of automation, such as spreadsheet-supported human work, generative AI can perform tasks from start to finish without human intervention.
And it reflects a troubling increase in businesses and companies opting to cut back human tasks in favor of technology.
A 2024 MIT study found that the adoption of AI led to a 19% drop in job postings involving repetitive cognitive tasks, while job postings for AI engineers and product managers rose by 11%. This asymmetry suggests that for every new job created in AI, 2 to 3 junior jobs disappear or are never posted. The disappearance of entry-level jobs poses considerable macroeconomic risks. These positions are essential for skill acquisition, upward mobility, and the renewal of human capital at intermediate and senior levels. Without them, the talent development pipeline could collapse, leading to a shortage of qualified personnel in key sectors within a decade. Moreover, rising unemployment among graduates could lead to a decline in consumer spending, higher default rates on student loans, and increased demand for public subsidies.
The unemployment rate for people between the ages of 22 and 27 with at least a bachelor's degree is consistently higher than the national rate.
All of which would put pressure on the broader economy. A projection from the Congressional Budget Office warned that if the current trend continues, student loan delinquency could rise from 7.8% to 12.5% by 2027. The emergence of artificial intelligence as a substitute for entry-level administrative work is one of the most disruptive forces in the modern labor market. While AI offers efficiency and cost savings for companies, it also threatens to dismantle the foundations of professional mobility for millions of workers.
At Economy Media, your opinion matters to us. Subscribe and let us know what you think in the comments below.
This is what I've been saying for a long time, that there's this decoupling of labor and capital, and that these computer scientists that are developing AI and the overall society feeding the AI so it becomes smarter is going to lead to major dislocation in the job market, especially at this moment in time, the young that are getting out of college and are looking for that entry-level position. Now, individuals that don't get into the job market based on their schooling, over time are not going to get the skills that they need for higher level positions. So this is going to be very detrimental for the young, but it's also going to be detrimental for the ones that are experienced, because the AI is going to be able to slowly creep up even in those positions. Now, I wrote a book a long time ago called Artificial Intelligence, and it was about different researchers' perspective on artificial intelligence and transhumanism. And then I gave my counter argument to that in the book. I personally think that artificial intelligence will lead to a dystopia, and many people will be out of work. Now, what's the Achilles heel of artificial intelligence? Energy. Humans are going to have to kill the grid. And that way, you kill AI. But that means for society to flourish long term, in the short term, it needs to go back to the 1700s. It needs to kill the grid. Now, that basically means that the population that is supported in the world of 8-9 billion people is based on energy. But if jobs aren't going to be available because of energy is feeding the AI, and you need to kill the grid, to kill the AI, you're actually going to have you're going to need to have major population reduction. So it's going to cause a dystopia in the world. It's not going to be Star Trek. It's going to be like Star Wars. So now, maybe somehow, some way, this all ends up being good, but there's no real good economic theory to see that this is going to be beneficial to the job market. So you're going to see a lot of people that are smart that will open up their own businesses and stay away from this kind of thing. All right. We're probably moving towards a time period pre-automobile industry, where the automobile industry created all this economic clustering, created a middle class. Before the automobile industry, there wasn't really a middle class. There was the poor and the rich. That was it. So we're kind of slowly increasing the poor. There are some people that will benefit from this transition and be very wealthy. And the middle class is just getting squeezed out. Now the question is will there be that middle class that builds businesses, that interfaces with each other, creates economic clusters, and it's not tied to this whole AI thing? So it's now going back to like a guild, or the blacksmiths, or shoemakers. Or the point I'm making is that during the Middle Ages, there were people that knew how to do things in low production and sell their wares, sell their product to people in the village. Something similar is going to have to happen. People are going to need to know how to make stuff. And, it's going to, I'm not so worried about tariffs. I'm a little bit more worried about the long-term integration of AI and what that means. Now, people would say, well, there's going to be universal income. Yeah, that will be okay maybe for the first year, but it's going to be inflationary, and the costs of goods will continue to go up and up and up as the society becomes less and less productive, because there's less people working. If the computers are doing everything for you, what do you do? What do you do? How do you make money? How do you pay your debts? How do you pay your mortgage? How does the government pay its bond issuance? R2D2 is just going to do all the work. Well, who's going to buy the goods? See, it's a big problem when you decouple labor and capital, and it will lead to a war. And that's what I predict. This is that mankind is going to have to, for it to survive, it's going to have to bite the bullet, kill the grid. Now, how long, when that happens, who knows? Maybe it's in 2045, maybe it's in 2050. It's not going to be tomorrow, but it's coming. It's coming. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And don't you want to see this dystopia? Use my anti-aging protocol, and you'll be able to see the prediction that I have in the making here. All kidding aside, this protocol that I have works. It's what I use to slow down the aging process and to have more vitality. All right. I have very high quality supplements on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And by improving your health and following the protocol, you're going to have more vitality. And by having more vitality, you're going to be able to weather the storm that's coming. Now, that storm could be pathogenic, and that storm can be technological. But if you're weak already, if your immune system is weak, your body is weak, your musculature, you're just decrepit, do you think that you're going to be able to withstand the pressures of society? Of course not. So part of surviving is to actually pay attention. Pay attention and build your body up, right? So you can weather the storm. Or you can pick fatalism and just die off. But, some people refuse to die and other people just give up. Which one are you? I don't know. please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the ubiquinol. Ubiquinol is very important to take if you're 40 years of age or older. Ubiquinol is going to help the health of the mitochondria. You're going to have more energy. It's an antioxidant. It's going to soak up free radicals. It's going to slow down that aging process. It's going to reduce the stress in the cell. And ubiquinol helps to protect neurons. Super important, especially when you're 40 years of age. You need healthy neurons. So take the ubiquinol every day. If you're 40 years of age or older, your pancreas doesn't function as well. Your pancreas is needed to help with producing insulin, to help with endocrine and exocrine balance, and to break up food. Your pancreas produces enzymes that breaks up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. But as you get older, the pancreas doesn't function as well. So taking digestive enzyme complex is going to help you break up those carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. So it's easier on your digestive system and it's easier on your pancreas. In addition, digestive enzyme complex has bromelain in it. It's fibrinolytic, so it's going to break up clots. Also, digestive enzyme complex is proteolytic, breaks up proteins, especially glycoproteins. And that's the reason why I told you to take it in 2020. I am very cutting edge, way ahead of everybody else, like by years, not by months, by years. Good Night Formula. Good Night Formula has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower. What this is going to do is help you to get into those 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep. So you're detoxifying your central nervous system to be well rested when you wake up in the morning. And it's also going to help to consolidate memory. Super important. So please go to my store and get the Good Night Formula. Now, a good stack is to get the Good Night Formula to help with consolidating memory, detoxifying your central nervous system, and getting good rest. The digestive enzyme complex to help with their pancreatic health, and ubiquinol as an antioxidant, boost up energy levels, and to help with neural health. So get the stack. Good Night Formula, digestive enzyme complex, and the ubiquinol. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Don't you want to be around for Star Wars? All right. President Trump talking about trade and tariffs.
Men doing at least 150 grand a year. If you're completely out of shape, let's drop the ego and get real for a moment. If you haven't been ripped in 10 years.
Mr. President, what kind of teeth though are in those investments? What kind of teeth are in those investments, meaning that would force the EU to make those investments? If they don't make those investments, what happens on the other side?
Well, then they pay tariffs of 35%. No, they brought down their tariffs. So they paid $600 billion. And because of that, I reduced their tariff from 30% down to 15%. And a couple of countries came, how come EU is paying less than us? And I said, well, because they gave me $600 billion. And that's a gift. That's not like, a loan, by the way. That's not a loan that, 3 years comes up, we have to pay it back. There's nothing to pay back. They gave us $600 billion that we can invest in anything we want.
The deal that you.
And nobody knows it, Becky. Nobody knows it. They don't know.
No, we have been trying to figure out the details on that, Mr. President. So
well, there are no details. The details are $600 billion to invest in anything I want. Anything. Okay. I can do anything I want with it. And the purpose was they've been, ripping us for so many years that it's time that they pay up, and they have to pay up. We couldn't afford to have the deficit. Look, I did something with Switzerland the other day. I spoke to their prime minister. The woman was nice, but she didn't want to listen. And they paid essentially no tariff. And I said, we have a $41 billion deficit with you, madam. I didn't know her. And she said, we have a $41 billion deficit. And you want to pay 1% tariff. You wanted 1%. I said, we're not going to pay 1%. We lose. Because I view deficit as loss. You have some people that, by the way, I think
pharmaceuticals are a big issue with Switzerland. I think.
Well, I'll go into pharmaceuticals. They make a fortune with pharmaceuticals, and they make our pharmaceuticals in China and Ireland and everything else. And within the next week or so, we're going to be announcing tariffs on specifically. This is this is a separate class than the 15% tariffs on sort of everything. And these are excluded classes, I call them. I like to call them excluded, like steel, aluminum, etc.
Right.
Well, we're going to be announcing on semiconductors and chips, which is a separate category, because we want them made in the United States. And by the way, they're being made in the United States. You know, we have the biggest in the world, as you know, from Taiwan is coming over and spending $300 billion in Arizona, building the biggest plant in the world for chips and semiconductors. But on pharmaceuticals, we'll be putting a initially small tariff on pharmaceuticals, but in 1 year, 1.5 years maximum, it's going to go to 150%, and then it's going to go to 250%, because we want pharmaceuticals made in our country. And that's not the CHIPS Act like Biden did, because they didn't know what he was doing, where they gave billions of dollars to companies that had more money than they knew what to do with.
President Trump, can I ask you about something that you're doing that's opposite of the Biden administration too, and that's the latest deal that you've announced. The latest deal, though, that you're announcing with India, you're upset with the trade deal there, especially because they're buying Russian oil. The Biden administration sanctioned Russian oil, but then they kind of winked and nodded and appreciated that India and China were buying some of that oil because they were worried it would raise oil prices and thereby prices at the pump. To you, is it more important to shut down the Russians on this than to worry about oil prices?
I'm not worried about prices because we're drilling at levels that nobody's ever seen before. And what Biden did is he stopped my drilling. And then prices, if you remember that first couple of months, prices went through the roof. And he immediately said, let's go back to what Trump was doing. Let's go back to it. But by that time, they had blown it, and the energy prices were so high, and that's what caused that. And his crazy spending is what caused. By the way, the largest inflation in the history of our country was during the Biden administration. Not 48 years. You know, they like to say 48 years. It was the largest in the history of our country, the inflation that we had during Biden, because the man obviously didn't know what he was doing. But with India, what people don't like to say about India.
Under Biden, we had high inflation, all right? But I don't think it's the highest. I believe that we had higher inflation in other epochs of our history, like during the early forming of the country, you know, so the 1700s. I think there was a high inflation even during Carter's administration. So I'm not sure if it's the highest. It was high, but I mean, come on. And this is where I think Trump is a little loose with the facts. Because the inflation was at, it was either at 7 or 9%. I think it was around 8.7 or something where it peaked for Biden. We had higher inflation before. Now, if he's measuring maybe the acceleration of the inflation, is he talking about first derivative or second derivative? This is where CNBC should be asking, well, what are you talking about? The actual inflation rate? Are you talking about absolute price difference from baseline to the new absolute price? The acceleration from one time period to another of the actual price? What are you talking about? So it's too loosey to narrow him in on a fact. But if it's just overall total inflation, I mean, George Washington was talking about how the provisions for goods was escalating, right? And this is in the 1700s. So I don't understand what he's talking about.
The highest tariff nation, they have the highest tariff of anybody. We do very, very little business with India because their tariffs are so high. So India has not been a good trading partner because they do a lot of business with us, but we don't do business with them. So we settled on 25%, but I think I'm going to raise that very substantially over the next 24 hours because they're buying Russian oil, they're fueling the war machine. And if they're going to do that, then I'm not going to be happy.
There are a lot of deals signed, and I don't know if, I thought India was imminent. I'm not sure what the sticking point is, there, Mr. President, but let's just, since we don't have all day, we gotta talk.
Well, the sticking point with India is that tariffs are too high. Now, I will say this, India went from the highest tariffs ever, they will give us 0 tariffs. And they're
So
gonna let us
Canada,
go in, but that's
let's
not
talk
good
about-
enough because of what they're doing with oil, not good.
Wouldn't it be great if you could read and manage your mail when away on business, on vacation, or
Wouldn't it be great that our young could actually just read? All right, let's listen to. There was another one here. Okay, this is Trump on immigration.
Yeah, Mr. President, you've talked about, you want success, not retribution. The Justice Department now tapping a grand jury, to look into, the intelligence community's assessment of what was happening, with Russia. Is that, you have nothing to do with directing the Justice Department?
No, I have nothing to do. Pam is doing a great job. I have nothing to do with it. I will tell you this, they deserve it. I was happy to hear it. I actually read it just like you did. I have nothing to do with it. But what they did in the election, what they did in even the last election, but it was too big to rig. But what they did in the 2020 election is grotesque. I mean, that was a rigged election.
Okay, we can't relitigate that. We can't relitigate that.
Now we're back to rigging again. Well, you can use it. You know what? A year ago, you would have been upset if I said it. Today, it's different. I say it all the time. It was a rigged election. 100% rigged.
We can't relitigate because
And I'm sure that's gonna be
independent sources, even your Justice Department, but then I'm bringing up Bill Barr, but even they decided that there were things that happened, but nothing that would have swayed it.
Well, they were wrong, and Bill Barr was wrong, and Bill Barr didn't investigate it. He should have. And why didn't Bill Barr give why didn't he give the Derma report? Why didn't he give that report? The stuff that's in there, that's all the stuff that's coming out of it. Why didn't he give it earlier? I mean, why did it take so long to do it? And why didn't he give it? Why didn't they announce it earlier? Because it's morphed. What happened is it morphed into the Biden administration, and the Biden administration buried it. So too bad.
How about Texas? Now we're gonna do mid-year or midterm gerrymandering.
All right. In terms of the crazy stuff that was happening with the election in 2020, what about that gap? That gap where it was like that 4 a.m. bump up for Biden? Statistically, that's impossible. All right. So what was going on with that? Why didn't we have audited at the state level, audited election count? Not certified, audited, and audit the machines. Why didn't that happen? Because if you certify an election, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean it's been audited. Audited means that you take samples or the whole thing and you recount it. You check to see if people that should have voted, and ones that shouldn't vote, didn't vote. You didn't want a situation where people that weren't supposed to vote be added to the voting count. There needed to be a proper audit. That didn't happen. It was certified. Oh, we just counted the votes and we just certified. Well, did you actually audit the voting roll? Did you actually audit the machines? No. And that was the big problem. And that's where the big steal happened. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the charcoal tea tree structural nano silver soaps. Very high quality soaps. You can also get it in lemongrass, lavender, and in peppermint. Please get a few bars of these very high quality structural nano silver soaps to help support the work that I do and help to support your health and wellness. Another great stack to help with your immune system and your cardiovascular system is the following. Turmeric. It's an antioxidant. It's going to soak up free radicals, but it also brings down inflammation. Very important to take every day. Taking ashwagandha root is going to help with controlling cortisol levels and helping to control your blood glucose levels. When you reduce inflammation at the vascular level, you're helping to reduce plaque formation. When you stack these together, you're bringing down inflammation at the vascular level and at the cellular level. And that basically means that you're helping with your vascular system and your immune system. And lignans. Lignans is a powder, you mix it with soft foods or with filtered water. Take it every day, it's gonna help with your endocrine system and your immune system. It's an antioxidant, so it's gonna soak up free radicals. It's gonna bring down inflammation. You stack these together, you have a very powerful stack to help with your cardiovascular health, to reduce plaque formation, and to boost up your immune system at the same time. This is a super powerful stack. So get the turmeric, the ashwagandha root, and the lignans, take them together. Take my advice, and you're gonna be helping multiple systems. Even if you don't wanna age slower, all right? But you wanna help with your vascular system or help with your immune system or both, that's a great stack, I just told you. Please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $150 or more on my store, you get a free gift until supplies last.
Based on, that's gonna be a quid pro quo or something with, in blue states now, Mr. President, did you?
Well, they did it to us, you know, those blue states that you're talking about. You know, somebody gave a good example. In Massachusetts, I got, I think, 41% of the vote. It's a very, you know, blue state. And yet it's got 100% of Congress, 100%. So I got 41% or something. And yet 100% of Congress in Massachusetts. No, it shouldn't be that way. We should have a couple of Congress people, but we have none. And think of this, 100%. In Illinois, we have probably the dumbest of all governors. Illinois, that guy is really sending, I mean, the business is blowing out of the state. It's terrible. It's a terrible thing that Pritzker's doing. You know, he was the black sheep of the family. They threw him out of the business. But in Illinois, what's happened is terrible what they're doing. And you notice they go to Illinois for safety, but that's all gerrymandered. California's gerrymandered. We should have many more seats in Congress in California. It's all gerrymandered. And we have an opportunity in Texas to pick up 5 seats. We have a really good governor and we have good people in Texas. And I won Texas. I get the highest vote in the history of Texas, as you probably know. And we are entitled to 5 more seats.
I have to check on that. And you know, they expect.
Check it. Why did you check it, Brian?
The fact checkers expect us to check everything you say on the phone.
I want you to check it.
For 4 years, those fact checkers didn't fact check anything it was said about. We don't need to relitigate that either, but they expect fact checking.
Why don't you check it, okay? Because I'd like you to. I got the highest vote in the history of Texas, okay?
Mr. President, can I ask you back to the economy and just on some of the things we've seen with the jobs report, the weakness in those numbers that came out last week. People are trying to figure out where the weakness is coming from. Part of it may be because of immigration. Now, people voted you into office because they were concerned about immigration policy in this country. But if you look at the jobs report last week, it did show a 1.7 million drop off of foreign-born workers from March to July.
That's a great number, by the way. That's a great number. Because it means we're putting Americans to work.
Well, the problem is immigrants have accounted for more than half of the U.S. workforce growth over the last 3 years. And so you wonder if that gets into an issue. And I know you've spoken with farmers who have had concerns about being able to find temporary workers there. Right. I think their pleas have kind of hit you in a way where you looked at that a little differently.
Well, I think this, we're getting the criminals out of our country because they had an open border policy because they were fools and they allowed people from prisons and gang members and drug dealers into our country. We're getting the criminals out of our country by the thousands, and they're taken. We have murderers. We have people that are mentally insane. They come out of insane asylums and you know, psych wards, and they come out of places that you don't want to know about. You would not like.
Not only do we have illegal immigration happening in the United States because of the porous border from the Biden administration, and you had criminals and crazies coming over the border, but we actually have individuals in our country going to college that are, you would say that Perhaps the colleges are even insane. A institution, quote institution, that's creating a crazy ultra liberals, insane ultra liberals. So it's not just illegal immigration that's importing insane individuals. We're creating insane individuals in the universities.
But they dumped everybody in our country, from the Congo in Africa to all over South America. They dumped millions of people into our country that are dangerous people, and I'm getting them out. I'm working with the farmers, however, and the farmers have been great. I also got the highest vote for farmers, I think, that anybody's ever gotten. And I take care of the farmers. I love the farmers. They're a very important part of this country. And we're not going to do anything to hurt the farmers. And we're working on that. And we're going to be coming out with rules and regulations. I mean, you'll see a farmer with the same person working for him for 20 years. The person's even paying taxes and other things. And we're looking for the criminals, the people that murdered. You know, we have 11,888 people that came into our country under Biden, with our great czar, a border czar. She never called one, she was a border czar. She never went to the border, and she never made one call to the Border Patrol. Other than that, she did a great job. But they had hundreds of people that were murdered, 11,888 murders. 50% of which murdered more than one person in our country. We've already gotten a lot of them out, and some of them are so dangerous we don't want to bring them back. We want to put them in our own prison because we don't want them coming back.
This is the reason why. This is the reason why I voted for Trump 3 times. All right, I like him engaging the politic and the discussion and calling off people. Now, he's a little loose on the facts sometimes. I'll admit to that. But the thing is that most politicians, they either run away, they don't engage the media, they definitely don't call. I mean, how often did you see Biden call CNBC or Fox or CNN? Never. Or Obama. They hide. They have a staffer creating a speech that's just boilerplate. But this is a real conversation that's going on at CNBC between the business staff and Donald Trump. And he's just letting it out, He doesn't have a staffer trying to sugarcoat it. Now, you may agree with him, you may disagree. In many cases, I agree with him. Maybe 80, 90% of the time, all right? But the thing is that that's what I want in a president, leadership. People need to start leading, trying to fix the problems instead of keyboard warrior, I don't like this, but don't do anything after they hit, the return button. Leaders lead and get things done. You engage and you move forward. You don't just, I don't like this, and I'm just going to type it up. And that's the reason why half the society are a bunch of pussies. Why you have another half of the society sitting on the fence, deciding if they're going to get on the battlefield or not.
888 murderers, many of which murdered more than one, into our population, and we're getting them out rapidly.
Mr. President, they don't believe how toxic this is. If you're still using a plastic or wooden cutting board, you need to hear this. I never post stuff like this, but I had to share. I cook almost.
All right, so now Trump is complaining on how the banks discriminated against him. So this is tied to Brian Moynihan.
And now the guest that we've been talking about all morning, President Donald Trump. Mr. President, welcome to the meeting. And people were talking about President Xi, and then you went out of your way to say other people are saying, I think you even called it fake news or something. It looked like you were indicating that you were unhappy or that talks had broken down. And we've had a couple of frameworks or some positive moves in China. We've had a lot of success with other countries. China is a big deal and not quite the elephant in the room, but certainly an important trading partner. Where does that stand? Will there be a meeting between you and President Xi? Anything Anything planned at this point? What's the sticking point now, and how optimistic are you that we get a
Well, I
comprehensive
can have a
deal?
meeting. We have a very good relationship, but I didn't call for the meeting. He called for the meeting. So the fake news announced Donald Trump wants a meeting with China. No, I didn't want it. No, he asked for a meeting, and I'll end up having a meeting before the end of the year, most likely, if we make a deal. If we don't make a deal, I'm not going to have a meeting. I mean, what's the purpose of meeting if we're not going to make a deal? But we're getting very close to a deal. We're getting along with China very well. I will tell you, you had a point when I had 145% tariffs on. I put in for fentanyl. I put in, actually said to people, where are we now with China, by the way? Because I kept adding more and more. They said, sir, you're up to 145%. I said, you got to be kidding. So I sort of tried to bring it down a little bit. But when it was up to 145%, meaning we were doing zero business with China, China was collapsing. I don't know if you know that. You haven't reported it if you do. But China was collapsing. China is very reliant on the United States. My relationship with him is very good. I think we'll make a good deal. It's not imperative, but I think we're going to make a good deal. But no, they had a thing that Donald Trump really wanted to go there. No, I don't. It's a 19-hour flight. It's a long flight. But at some point in the not too distant future, well, and just to end this conversation in China, I have a very good relationship with President Xi. Always had, other than the COVID moment where I was very angry with him and essentially didn't want to talk to him, frankly. Because, it did come out of Wuhan in all fairness, which I was saying from day one, I was saying, I knew exactly where it came from. But that did interfere with the relationship.
Ground zero for the crisis in late 2019 was China and Wuhan. All right, that's ground zero. Now, there's a lot of nuance to this. There was actually 3 releases. One was in August, one was in October, and one was in November. 2 of them didn't take. All right, so, and they had different lethalities. But it's a CCP USA Byron. All right? Not just a China one. I think I made that extremely clear with 5 years of covering this bullshit. It's a USA CCP virus. For sure. 100%. And funded heavily by NIH. But ground zero was in China.
No, I've had a great relationship with President Xi. We respect him a lot. They respect us a lot. They didn't respect Biden. They thought he was a numbskull. They couldn't believe he was the president of the United States, and neither can anyone else if that happened.
Mr. President, on a different topic, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that you're prepping an order that they say would punish banks that discriminate against conservatives, including potentially Bank of America. I'm going to be actually talking to Brian Moynihan here later today. Can you tell us about that executive order? What's in that? And what do you think the banks have done?
Well, they did discriminate. I had JP Morgan Chase. I had hundreds of millions of dollars in cash. I could see if they want to, if they want to do something bad because you don't have any money and you're defaulted and they took people out. But I'll give you me as an example. I had hundreds of millions. I had many accounts loaded up with cash. I was loaded up with cash. And they told me, I'm sorry, sir, we can't have you. You have 20 days to get out. I said, you got to be kidding. I've been with you for 35, 40 years. They said, and I mean, I had all this, I didn't know what to do with it. And I went to, and you could ask him, maybe he's not going to admit it. So I said, I was informed by my people that we have to get out of Chase Manhattan. That's Jamie and JP Morgan Chase. So I said, I can't believe it. Well, I was never in this situation before. I've never had anything like it. And it's not like, gee, you defaulted on a loan. Geez, if I could understand that, that's different. But there's no default. I mean, there's nothing but cash. I have a really great company. And then what happens is I call up Bank of America routinely because when I was president, this was after I got out of I call up Bank of America routinely. And I speak to him and I speak to a couple of people and they have zero interest. Brian was kissing my ass when I was president.
Wait, hold on. Just imagine when we go to the digital dollar and there are no coinage, no dollar bills, but everything's digital on a blockchain. What happens when you become a pariah of society? What happens when you are considered a dissident? The system shuts you down. Now, if that can happen to a president, a former president, and a billionaire, don't you think that it'll happen to little old 1000-aire out there in most of the society? The far majority of the people would not have the means to fight the system. And therefore, what you have are compliant economic units, compliant carbon-based economic units that will eventually be replaced by inorganic, non-carbon economic units, aka humanoids. All right? So what are you going to do? You're just going to type away at the keyboard and be a keyboard warrior? Or are you going to fight the system before the system is boxed you in? Now, some people would say, it's already boxed in, DrPaulCottrell, blah, 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 blah. No, we're not boxed in yet. Because guess what? You still have a dollar bill. You still have coinage. But as we start to move towards a 100% digital currency, and you are protecting the civil liberties that are enshrined in the Constitution, and you don't protect those amendments, like the freedom of speech, then something similar is going to happen to you when the system doesn't like what you have to say, or when the system doesn't like you for whatever reason. Religion, your color, your skin color, maybe the way you dye your hair. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? If this is what can happen to someone that is a 6 billionaire, a president and former president, if that's what can happen to them, what the hell is going to happen to little old you?
And when I told him after I was president to deposit $1 billion plus and a lot of other things, more importantly to open accounts, which banks always like, they like accounts because they get interest free, you know, the overnights and things, a lot of reasons for it, but they like accounts. They had hundreds of accounts. And he said, we can't do it. No, we can't do it. So I went to another one. I ended up going to small banks all over the place. I mean, I was putting 10 million here, 10 million there, 5 million, 10 million, 12 million. I have them all over the place, the craziest thing. And it's lucky I even had them. They were doing me a favor. And that's because the banks discriminated against me very badly. And I was very good to the banks. They had the greatest economy in the history of our country when I was president. And by the way, our economy now will blow that away. And you see it happening. But our economy now, because we're a rich country again, because of our trade deals, we've become a rich country again. But no, they totally discriminate against, I think me maybe even more, but they discriminate against many conservatives. You know, I told that story and sitting around tables with other people that were conservative or Trump supporters. I think the word might be Trump supporters more than conservative. And I believe what they did is they went to the regulators. You know, banks are not afraid of anything but a regulator. They're regulators and their wives. They're more afraid of their wives than the regulators. But the group they're really afraid of is bank regulators. And I believe that Biden or Kamala, and I don't think they're smart enough to do it, but the people that are surrounding the beautiful Resolute desk the high IQ people that are radical left. I believe they told the banking commission, the bankers, that the banking regulators, do everything you can to destroy Trump. And that's what they did. And guess what? I'm president. How did that happen?
All right, let's continue on. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Many people within this year you're gonna start hearing or feeling or knowing people that have razor throat. All right, so it's important. It's really important, no matter what the season is, to make sure that you have lozenges and drops to mitigate that irritation in your throat right away. All right, and help to boost up that immune system. Now, I have 3 types of drops. All right. You can get it in blueberry, in 100 count, cherry, and also in honey lemon. The drops are smaller than the lozenges, but you take them right away when you have that irritation to mitigate the problem. If you let it fester, you're going to have problems. So you got to take my advice. Make sure you have some at work and have some at home. Use them right away. I also have in stock the elderberry zinc in a 21 count. Again, the lozenges are larger than the drops. So get a few bags for your household. Be prepared. It's coming. All right. Now, who's the most accurate on this crap than anyone on the internet? Who's the most accurate? Dr. Paul Cottrell. Nobody else is more accurate. Nobody. There is nobody more accurate on this. So just pay attention because it's coming. All right. Let's listen to BofA now, Brian Moynihan. Let's see if he has anything nice to say about Trump. This was one day ago on Face the Nation, the liberal broadcast by CBS.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform made for anyone with an idea and a drive to bring it to life. Describe what you want and watch it take shape. You can plan.
And we're back with Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan. Good morning, and thank you for being here with us.
It's good to be here. Good morning.
Now remember,
Well,
Moynihan was a major CEO that prevented Trump from having bank accounts at BofA. And by the way, I think he's one of the dumbest of the bankers that are out there in the big 3.
I'm hoping you can give us some clarity here on what's going on with the economy. Your Bank of America economists say no rate hikes this year and no recession. Is that still the case after Friday's jobs report?
Yeah, it's still the case. And that's a less growth than they would have had 6-9 months ago and reflects the impact of the tariff war and the trade and all that. But they still think it continues to grow. It will grow at a slow rate, say 1.5% this year, a little more next year, and a little more the year after that. But it'll take inflation for the Fed to get inflation out of the system really through the end of 26 and into 27 down to the 2% level. And that's why they had the Fed hold. What they believe is sort of in the middle of next year, the Fed will start cutting and bring the Fed funds rate closer to what would be a more normal rate around 3%, 3.5%.
So even though we saw this really kind of astounding dissent by 2 members of the Fed saying we do need to move on interest rates, your prediction from your economists is that that's not appropriate at this time.
They don't think they're going to move. Now, the market says they're going to move in September, maybe twice this year. The market was at 7 times 1 point this year. Now they're down to 2. Then they're down to 1. Now they're up to 2. This is going to move around. But the reality is two things people should really keep in focus. One is until the inflation's out of the system, the Fed's going to be a little very careful, and that's what they said. And then secondly, the rate we're going to go to is a rate that is more.
Let me get this straight. So under Biden's administration, they weren't so focused on inflation. They thought it was transitory, right? They let it just skyrocket to the moon. But under Trump's administration, They're laser focused, and just in case tariffs increase goods and services, we gotta hold off and not cut rates. That seems like the Federal Reserve is a bit politically biased, doesn't it? And I'm telling you, Brian Monahan from BofA is someone you can't trust. One, he's an idiot, and two, I think he aligned himself with the Democratic Party.
Global financial crisis, more of a 3%, 3.5% rate, which actually means the American economy is probably functioning better, frankly.
So on that point, the Wall Street Journal, we were reading in, puts the tariff tax increase is costing $360 billion a year. That's one of the largest tax increases in history, they say. Do you believe the administration's argument that it's really only foreigners who are going to pay the cost of this? Do you think economists are overstating?
Here's the problem. If you just look at the cost, see, they're only looking at the cost. They're only looking at one side of the equation. But this is a multivariable equation. It has two sides to it. All right? You have tariffs that go up. Not all of the increase in the tariff is going to be priced into the actual end consumer. It's about a third, maybe less. In some cases, a little bit more, but it's not the 100%. That's not happening. Two, so there's going to be slight increase in certain goods and services. There's going to be economic clustering because manufacturing is coming back. So there's going to be more GDP. She's not talking about that side of it. That's a positive aspect to tariffs. And there's also revenue generation, so we have less taxes. Would you like to have less taxes? I would say yes. But, of course, Margaret from Face the Nation only looks at the negative. The consumer, not the, you need to be a producer. Stop being a consumer, be a producer, all right? Start being an entrepreneur. Stop being just a consumer. Stop being a slave laborer, no matter what job you have. If you're working for someone, you're a slave. All right. So Margaret from Face the Nation is always focused on the negative, never the positive. Tariffs generate revenue for the government. That means it needs less taxes from you. And it takes that money and pays the debt that Congress keeps on increasing. But better yet, it brings manufacturing back. Economic clustering is what will fuel a more robust economy. And not only that, you will have the prowess to wage war against the CCP in this decade. But the intelligentsia between Wash, that's Boston and Washington, all right, that corridor where the intelligentsia is in the United States seems to think that tariffs are really bad. It's so bad. You ever wonder why she's always dressed in white? Why is she always promoting suffrage? Why? Why? Isn't that some like 1920 thing?
Well, I think no one really knows, honestly, because this is a different regime than we've been in before. And so they're trying to extrapolate from things from 50 years ago when the economies were a different structure. Our team thinks it has an impact on inflation of about 30, 40 basis points.
Meaning adding to prices people are paying.
Yeah, adding to the inflation rate in the United States. But we need to back up. What the real impact right now is the new Trump administration coming in had 4 or 5 policy areas.
34 basis points. You know what that means? 0.34 of whatever the inflation number is. Now, if the Federal Reserve is saying inflation's around 2.3, 2.7%, tariffs are only affecting that number by 0.34. Really? And that's going to be the fall of the economy? When the Federal Reserve can go up and down 50 basis points? When they lower rates? See, you need to understand the magnitude of the issue. Tariffs aren't the issue. Economic clustering is. Shipping our jobs away for the last 35 fucking years, that's a problem.
Really going to go after, having learned in the 4 years they had to move very quickly. Those were around trade and tariff, immigration and taxation and deregulation. What businesses, and I just was in the Midwest with a bunch of businesses, are all trying to do is figure out what the answer will be so they can go ahead and make their plans for 26. So the activity that's slowed down has more to do with.
Let me get this straight. See, this is what I mean by this dipshit that's running BofA, Brian Moynihan. All right? Tariffs are affecting only 34 basis points, 0.34 of the inflation rate, 0.34% of the inflation rate. The magnitude of what the Federal Reserve does by cutting rates is far greater in what they do than the tariffs. Now, wait a minute here. Wait a minute. Let's think about this for a sec. He's saying that businesses don't know what they're going to do because they don't know how the tariffs are going to affect their business. Maybe for Nike, maybe for Louis Vuitton. When you're only talking about 0.34% of inflation, if you're worried about 0.34% of inflation, as if it's a go or no go in terms of your business, maybe your business has a bigger problem. And this is the issue that I have with Brian Moynihan running BofA. He's a fucking dipshit.
Figure out the answer. It doesn't mean every answer is acceptable, but most answers are. So what they have answers on, obviously the tax bill getting done. That's a good answer for business because it makes the rates permanent.
See,
what's the second thing?
Look at that.
Answer on?
He's on a national show. You just heard that noise? He's on a national show, Face the Nation, CBS, with Margaret Brennan or whatever her name is, dressed in a suffrage suit, and he spills water all over the damn glass table because he's a fucking idiot. Not only is he an idiot cognitively, he's a freaking idiot with his motor coordination.
Range of trade possibilities. And so as they think about the trade possibilities, they sit there and say, tariffs might not be worse than X. They see some deals getting done, all of which is good work. What they don't have an answer on is deregulation. Yes, new regulations stop, but they're hoping for more deregulation, so that will help their business models going forward. And then last is immigration. What will immigration really settle in like? And that's what they tell us. So they're not using their lines of credit. They're not, the indications from them are they're being a little more cautious, really waiting for some answers.
Oh, let's get this straight. Okay, so it's not about the tariffs, it's about immigration. And it's about deregulation. We need lots of deregulation because over the years we have too much regulation. And by having less regulation, we're going to be able to bring back those economic clusters and have a better debt to GDP ratio. That's super important. And we need to have manufacturing to wage a war with China because it's coming. Now, guess what? He also says about immigration. What about what's going on with immigration? If you're using labor because it's illegal labor, illegal immigration, and you're using their labor, that's slavery, just in a modern day parlance. So is he promoting slavery? Is Moynihan promoting slavery? While Margaret is in a suffrage suit, all white? Something's flipped here. Where's the logic? So wait a minute, let me get this straight. Businesses need illegal immigrants to have slave labor to lower the cost of labor. All right? And then you have Margaret that's dressed in a white suit that's promoting suffrage. And I'm not making this shit up. This is on Face the Nation that was 1 day ago.
Either we saw in this jobs data on Friday. It was the worst 3 months for job growth since the pandemic. Your firm, when I was reading the analysis, points to a number of different factors, and one of them is artificial intelligence. And the
Now, before we go down the road of artificial intelligence, let's just make sure we go, your firm, BofA, comma, who debanked Donald Trump and his family, comma.
Now that impacting hiring, how dramatically is it reshaping the job market?
Well, I think this is sort of a question of almost a glass half full, half empty type of thing. So the impact.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
But he spilled the water all over the table. So the glass is empty. I mean, he's literally a fucking idiot. He walked right into that one.
Sorry about that. But the impact of technology on human work content as a percentage of productivity has been huge. In our company, in 2010, when I started with the management team, we had 285.
Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. Let me cut to the chase. You know what this means? Higher productivity means less workers at your firm. So the margins are better. The company's spending less money. The stock's going to go up. Monahan is going to have a better executive package because his return on investment is higher. He's making more money. And then another company does something similar. Reduces staff. They're more productive. Wall Street awards them with higher stock prices. And the CEOs love it because they get a better executive package. Buy another mansion somewhere. Maybe even go to France for a vacation. All right? Other industries do the same thing, and more. Then all of a sudden, goods and services, the demand for goods and services go down. Why? Because they've reached that threshold where they laid off too many people. But they don't care because they were paid a great executive package. And now they have a mansion in 3 different states. And they can have a vacation in France. That's where this is going.
Okay. That was the impact of technology. We're bigger, more customers, more transactions, more reports to the government, more data, et cetera. So the impact has always been huge. AI gives you a place to go that we've never been able to go before. In other words, there are jobs that take text, think about it, and produce it. Many jobs on our company, our research team. Mm-hmm. Now you're able to maybe use a machine to enhance that activity. So we believe that people will harness AI for the benefit and be very successful. That my teammates will harness AI for the benefit and very successful. It's nervous making for young kids now saying, will the jobs be there for me?
Right.
Then I say, look back historically, America has a lot more people working here. And think about the amount of technology came over the last 50 years.
So Brian Monahan from BofA is saying this. Creative destruction is going to lead to a growing economy through AI. Now, his take, and he doesn't articulate it very well, but his take is, well, if you have a machine that produces more, then you're more productive. Problem. We didn't have a machine that could make itself before. We didn't have a machine that can learn new tasks that it wasn't originally designed for. Your machines in the past didn't have a positive feedback loop. AI has positive feedback loops, so it can accelerate innovation of itself. It is more like evolution. And because of that, it's going to put pressure on species that can't move as fast. So you need to pay attention to evolution and the dynamics of an ecosystem when you have a new species that has evolved that can outpace all the other species within the ecosystem. That's the difference, Brian Monahan. But he's running BofA. Now let me think about this for a second. Listen to Dr. Paul Cottrell tell you why he doesn't fully understand the issue. BofA gives loans to businesses. BofA gives loans for mortgages so you can buy a home or a car. They even give loans to other banks. When you have a society that can't pay the loans go into default, and therefore stress is going to happen at the banking industry. So he's promoting AI, but once the creative destruction doesn't work, and you reach a certain threshold, and there's a certain number of the population that's underemployed or unemployed, and debts aren't being paid, the banking sector is gonna get flushed down the toilet. And they're gonna be knocking on Congress's door asking for a bailout. But AI is so great. It's so great. It's great for him because he's at an age and with an executive package to benefit from it. Are you of an age and of an executive package to benefit from it? Probably not. Unless you're Brian Monahan, listen to Dr. Paul Cottrell.
In this country, we did 50 years ago, twice as many. The population's only gone up by about a third. So think about that dynamic as it finds its way through. That's a glass half full part of it, but it will have an impact. I don't think it's impacting a lot right now because
he doesn't have a glass that's half full. He emptied it all over the table by spilling it.
You're just trying to learn how to use it.
Yeah.
Technology is impacted and AI gives a place to go. It hasn't gone so far.
So we're talking about all the unknowns and why it's kind of hard to model things right now. Well, Friday, the president fired, as you know, the head statistician that comes up with these jobs numbers and presents them to the public. The former head during the first Trump administration came out in her defense and said this is without merit and it undermines credibility of data. Are you concerned by this firing, and do you feel there is political pressure here?
Well, I think that's more politics than I know I'm in Washington, D.C., and that's what we're supposed to talk about.
Government data.
But the reality is the data, it's 2025. It's 2025, and the data should be able to be. They use surveys and things like that, which frankly just aren't as effective anymore. So if you look at the rate of people who respond to their surveys, it's down from 60% level to 50% level. You know, we don't use surveys as aggressively do. We watch what consumers really do. We watch what businesses really do. They can get this data, I think, other ways, and I think that's where the focus would be. How do we get the data to be more resilient and more predictable?
And this is what Cottrell was saying on Fox Business. The econometric models need to be reconfigured because the method of analyzing the economy with the labor statistics is old. It's too old. The methods are too old. With this whole kind of regression modeling now that we can have and point of service collection of data in real time, why can't they get more accurate? Oh, because this is the way we did it, since, the dinosaurs.
Because what bounces around is restatements, and that was one of the largest restatements going back 5 or 7 years in the pandemic, 5 years in the pandemic. That creates doubt around them. And so I think the key is let's spend some money, let's bring the information together, let's find where else in the government money is reported. We report millions and millions of data points to the government every day. The data's out there somewhere.
Finally, back in January, you were at Davos. President Trump talked about Bank of America.
Many conservatives complained that the banks are not allowing them to do business within the bank, and that included a place called Bank of America. They don't take conservative business And I don't know if the regulators mandated that because of Biden or what.
Do you want to respond to the allegation that conservatives are not being allowed to do business with your bank?
We have 70 million consumers and we're the biggest small business lender. So that's not it. The issue they're focused on is the regulators' impact on this industry. You heard Senator Scott talk about this week. This reputation.
The biggest portfolio for consumer loans. And if you have high unemployment because AI, BofA is going to have a big problem.
This after the fact look, did you banked X? And now after the fact, you're going to say X didn't turn out to be what you thought. So we look at it based on risk. People may feel those decisions are made for some other reason, but we always make it on what's best for our company, what's best for the client.
Are there industries you are uncomfortable doing business with?
No, we do business really.
Guns, oil, gas, tobacco, all of it?
We do business with all those industries. Individual companies, things like credit decisions, stuff, that's different. But the reality is that if they gave us clarity from the regulatory thing and avoid the second guessing, that would be helpful. And I think that's what the president was pointing out to us.
All right. Brian Moynihan, thank you for giving us some insight into the data you are seeing.
One day, you won't have to assemble the entire creative team, just a little.
I'll tell you, Monahan is an idiot. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take this stack to help with your cardiovascular health and your immune system. Omega-3 will help to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. Also, omega-3 helps to bring down systemic inflammation. Super important for your cardiovascular health. By improving your lipid profile and reducing the chances of building up plaque. Super important to take omega-3 every day. Vitamin C and magnesium. Magnesium will help with brain function. Vitamin C will help with skin, and vitamin C with magnesium will help with your immune system. So it's a dual purpose. Vitamins, stack them together, and you're helping your immune system, your brain function, your skin, and your cardiovascular health. So please go to my store, get the vitamin C with magnesium and the omega-3 stack. Also, magnesium helps to improve the efficacy of vitamin D3. So please go to my store and get vitamin C with magnesium and omega-3. Another great stack that I have that will help with your bone density and your cardiovascular health is the following. D3 will help to absorb calcium. It helps as a cofactor for gene expression. And D3 helps to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis. That was really important in 2020. Now, vitamin D3 also stacked with vitamin K2 MK7 molecule will help to absorb the calcium that you're taking, either through milk, that's how I take my calcium, or through calcium supplement, and do resistance training, and you're going to build denser bone over time. Super important. But another trick to build denser bone, especially in the legs and the hip and the spine, is to be on a hard floor, take off your shoes and your socks, and to do calf lifts. All right. So you're lifting off your toes and then you're coming back down, and do that with a little bit of force onto your heel. And that produces a vibration up through your leg, into your hip, into your spine. And that vibration, doing about 50 a day, 50 of those calf lifts a day, with taking calcium and taking vitamin D3 and K2 and also doing resistance training, lifting weights. By doing that, you're going to gain denser bone. That's super important to strengthening the femur, the neck of the femur, and your hip. And by doing that, you're reducing the chances when you go into your geriatric years, you're reducing fractures. You're reducing chances of fractures. So it's super important to do. So D3, K2, and do that little trick that I just told you. In addition, olive leaf extract is a dual purpose supplement. You can take it separately, but it's synergistic. Now, olive leaf extract is going to help to bring down inflammation. That's important for your vascular system and for your immune system. And olive leaf extract will help to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. By doing that, you're reducing the chances of oxidized LDL and you're reducing the chances of building up plaque. So if you take them together, D3, K2, and olive leaf extract, you're doing two things. You're helping with your cardiovascular health, but you're also, with the resistance training, you're gaining denser bone over time. Now, your bones need a remodel. It takes about 5 years to turn over and remodel. You do get benefits after a year, but you get the max benefits of this type of protocol if you stick to the program and you do it for 5 years. All right, so please pay attention. This is a way so you don't get osteopenia or osteoporosis. All right, I just told you, so you don't have to be on pharmacopoeia and the side effects of those types of medications that try to mitigate osteopenia or osteoporosis. You don't want that, right? So pay attention to Dr. Paul Cottrell. Take the D3, take the K2. All right, do the resistance training. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. And if you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All righty. All right, let's listen about what's going on in the housing market in the United States.
A tale of two housing markets, home prices in half the country on the way up and in the other half going down. Let's bring in Katrina Campins, Fox Business real estate contributor and host of Mansion Global. Katrina, great to have you on. People have so many questions when it comes to the housing market right now, and seems that, you know, there's still a wait and see for these interest rates to maybe come down and increase affordability. So what are we seeing right now and what are the trends?
Thanks for having me on, Sandra. Real estate has always been about location, location, location. And that's more true now than ever. Right now, the U.S. housing market feels like two different countries. In parts of the South, like Texas and Florida, prices are softening as post-pandemic building booms finally catch up to demand. Yet in the Midwest and the Northeast, home prices continue to climb due to aging housing stock, restrictive zoning, and sluggish permitting that stifles new construction. Now, even where prices are cooling, homes remain about 46% more expensive than before the pandemic. This regional divide is fueling a national reshuffling. Families and businesses are leaving high-cost, heavily regulated blue states for lower-tax, pro-growth red states, accelerating America's political and economic transformation. But beneath the headline lies a deeper problem, a structural mismatch between where homes are being built and where the demand actually exists. There's outdated zoning laws and labor shortages and underinvestment infrastructure.
It's such a great point. And that is what we are seeing, right? Where it's easier to build new homes. You're seeing those prices come back down. Obviously, when supply goes up, it allows those prices to come down. This is a snapshot of what we have been able to see per the U.S. Census Bureau over the past year. The amount of new homes for sale up almost 9%. Median sale price then comes down about 3%, but still new home sales is down. So this is a sign that the U.S. housing market is cooling. This is President Trump suggesting, when he spoke about this, he took a question on the housing market just a couple weeks ago, suggesting lowering those interest rates will help a lot. Listen.
How important is it we have no tax on home sales, capital gain, to unleash the housing market?
Well, we're thinking about that, but it would also unleash it just by lowering the interest rates. If the Fed would lower the rates, we wouldn't even have to do that. But we are thinking about no tax on capital gains on houses. We should have lowered interest rates many times. Europe lowered their rate 10 times. We lowered ours none. And it's causing a problem for people that want to buy a home.
So you got to think that if you're a buyer in this market, you know, that you're saying, well, if they're talking about lowering the interest rates in September, I might as well wait. And if you're a seller, you might be thinking about waiting because you've got to go get into another house. So maybe that's what this is all about.
There's so much going on in the housing market. We also have to realize a really important data is affecting the housing market, which is family formation, right? Less people are getting married, so that's also affecting home ownership. And then you have many longtime home.
God, country, and family. If you have a society that is eroding those pillars, you're not going to have a productive society. But the liberals know better. The liberals know better. The blue-haired liberals know better, right?
Who hold the majority of housing wealth in this country. And they're sitting on massive gains and are hesitant to sell because they face capital gains taxes. And this is very apparent in Florida, California, and New York. And at first glance, people tell me, well, that's only helping the wealthy. But it's not, because it hasn't been adjusted since 1997, and things have changed drastically since then. So the middle class is affected by capital gains, and you have so many staying in their homes because they don't want to pay that tax. We also have to realize when people's multiple streams of income for federal, state, and local governments, from tax transfers to property taxers, and also remodeling, retail. In fact, the National Association of Realtors estimates that every home sale generates about $86,000 in economic activity when adjusted for inflation. So reforming capital gains, whether it's full elimination or indexing it for inflation, would free up inventory. But I do agree, Sandra, that a lot of people are waiting to see what happens with interest rates, because affordability is the main issue, and they don't have enough supply in the Northeast and the Midwest.
I can imagine that would change things a lot. Right now, the market's anticipating that could be changing. That first cut could be coming in September. And for most people, this is the largest investment they ever make, the largest asset they ever own. It's important. Thank you so much, Katrina. Good to get you on the program.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Think about it. The largest asset you own is going to be your home. That's probably the wrong way to go. Your largest asset should be in some sort of liquid, something very liquid, which is more like stocks or bonds. All right, let's listen to about China.
Across China, government employees are being told, hey, you can't travel abroad without permission. Some workers have even been ordered to hand in their passports. Gordon Chang joins us now. Why is China closing up? Why are they afraid of foreign contact?
First of all, Stuart, I think that there's just paranoia, but also they know that they're in trouble. When someone travels abroad, they bring money out, and China has a cash problem. The other thing is that I think that there's a general concern that people in Beijing see that if people travel abroad, Chinese travel abroad, they're going to get a very different view of the world than recent Chinese propaganda. The gap between what China says about itself and reality is growing, and we've seen that over the last couple of months. I think Beijing is really, really worried.
Is Xi Jinping's leadership a little brittle? Is it in question here? The last time you were with us, you were saying, yeah, he's got problems.
Yeah, he certainly has problems, and we're going to know by the end of October how true these rumors are. There's two big events between now and then. One of them is that there has traditionally been senior Chinese leaders meet at a seaside resort, BeiDahe, and they often hammer out really important leadership decisions. The second thing is the Communist Party is holding its fourth plenum in October. That's going to deal with a lot of economic issues. We're going to see how Xi Jinping weathers these 2 months. If he weathers them, then he's okay. But if not, I think there's going to be a real change in the leadership. And we're all just waiting. It's criminology.
I wonder how they're going to deal with this, because China's fertility rate is falling. A study suggests it's dropped below replacement levels. Is China's population actually falling, Gordon? And if it is, what's the implications of that?
It's been falling for about 3 years. It's now about 1.4 billion people. Some say 1.3 billion. But by the end of this century, Stuart, it's going to be somewhere between 330 and 770 million. This is going to be the biggest population fall in history in the absence of war or disease. And essentially, China's total fertility rate now is probably half of replacement. So you can see why this population is going to collapse fairly soon.
You need 2 point, the fertility rate has to be 2.1. That for replacement, right. Your population stays stable at 2.1. I think that's babies per woman in a lifetime, or whatever. Right. But China's fertility rate is half that now?
Yeah, and China claims 1.3. Some Chinese demographers say it's actually 1.1. You'll see some say 1.0. There's a lot of disagreement about fertility in China for a number of reasons. But clearly it's around half of replacement.
But that's an economic problem, isn't it? Because if your fertility rate shrinks, your population actually gets older, and there are more and more retired people who have to be supported by fewer and fewer actual workers. That's the economic problem for China right now, right?
It's a dependency ratio, and China's dependency ratio is worse than almost every other country's. So it's not just a shrinking population, it is who's in that population. And by the way, China
The thing
believes
is that
you get
if
around-
you need more support by the society, this is where AI humanoids come in. And that's probably the reason why focus on Japan. I know they're talking about China, but focus on Japan. They're going to implement humanoids for geriatric care. It's going to happen. Trust me.
This with robots, but you can't do that. You can ameliorate some of the effects of population decline by automation, but not to the extent that China needs.
Okay. According to the Wall Street Journal, China's limiting access to critical minerals for our defense companies. Gordon, I thought we had an agreement on these minerals. Is China not honoring their side of the deal?
They're not honoring the May 12th agreement. By the way, China, we got to buy, but China's got to sell. The Chinese had a similar export ban on rare earths to Japan in 2010. The Japanese said, we're not going to put up with this. And actually, they got around it, actually also buying directly from Chinese state enterprises that had to sell. And about 2 or 3 months later, the Chinese just dropped the export ban because it wasn't working. We're so much more powerful than Japan is. We should be able to do the same thing. Yes, it's going to hurt. But remember, we've got a lot of leverage too. We've got parts for Boeings. They need access to our market right now because China is more export dependent than it's been in a very long time. President Trump still holds the high cards, and I hope that he plays them.
What do you think? I've got 30 seconds. What do you think of the chances of a China trade deal within the next month?
I don't think so, because I think both China and the United States are stalling. China's stalling because of the leadership turmoil. We're stalling because President Trump is stitching up all these trade deals that are isolating China. So actually delay helps us. And I think that's what Trump is doing.
Gordon Chang, thanks so much for being with us. We'll bring you back as soon as possible for more on China. Thank you, Gordon.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I guarantee you need to brush your teeth every day. Why don't you go to my store and get the best toothpaste that you can buy? It's made from structural nanosilver. They'll whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, help with the health of your gum line, reduce inflammation at the gum line, and with good oral hygiene, you're going to have better health overall. Not just your oral hygiene, but cardiovascular and valvular health will improve. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get this structural nanosilver toothpaste. A lot of people don't realize that poor oral hygiene can affect your vascular system. So pay attention. Use a good toothpaste. That's the best toothpaste that you can buy. I also have gels. You can get it in the tube form or in the quick dispenser form. These gels are dual purpose. You can put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your eyes, around your nose, around your ears, lightly coat your nostrils, stays active for 5.5 hours. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, guess what? Use this. You can use it as a daily skincare. Also, if you have a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn, you can put it on the skin and it'll help to heal it quicker. You can use it as an aftershave. So ladies, if you're shaving your legs, use the gel and it'll soothe that razor burn. Guys, you're shaving your face, use it as an aftershave to help heal the skin. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the gels. I have 2 types, in the quick dispenser or in the tube form. Make sure you have some at home and at work. You never know when you need it. Also, cleanse. It's a 30 parts per million. You take a teaspoon a day, swish in your mouth, gargle 20 seconds or 30 seconds, and then swallow. That's going to help to boost up your immune system and improve your oral cavity and your oral pharynx. Super important to maintain that mucosal barrier and to maintain healthy epithelial lining. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get cleanse. And lastly, deodorants. Everyone needs the deodorant. You don't want to smell, right? So go to my store and get the deodorants that I have. I have it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, and in citrus. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas. Very high quality deodorants, and they're dual purpose for males and females. Use it as a deodorant, and it will help to detoxify your body. So please go to my store, get a few bars for your household. Use the very high quality deodorants that also help to detoxify your body. It's made from natural ingredients. You can't get a better deodorant than that. All right, let's go to balance of power on Bloomberg.
The demand, not only here in the US, but there was so much interest overseas. We saw during the president's trip to the Middle East how much interest there was in Saudi Arabia and in the United Arab Emirates for buying those chips to be able to invest in artificial intelligence and in data centers that would be based there locally.
There's something. It's an incredible story, even with this update, the idea of tariffs. NVIDIA just shy of $180 today, down just $2 with the help of Michael Shepard. A much better understanding now of what might be coming, whether it happens in 2 or 3 weeks. We'll find out together. Mike, thank you so much, as always, for being with us here on Balance of Power. Got a lot more to follow. Retired Marine Corps General Arnold Panaro is coming in next, only on Bloomberg.
Let's see here. A lot of people in tech are getting worried about AI. All right, let's listen about the natural gas industry.
Take a look at shares of Williams. The company handles roughly a third of all the natural gas that is transported in the U.S. It oversees more than 30,000 miles of pipelines. It was a miss on Q2 earnings. You can see that's weighing on the stock a bit. Despite posting better than expected revenue, it did raise as well the low end of its guidance into year end. Joining us now, and first on CNBC interview with Williams CEO Pat Zamarin. Good to have you this morning. We were just talking with our last guest, David Zervos, about deregulation and the importance that will have for the economy. I'm sort of curious to get your perspective, given obviously one would expect that Williams would be a beneficiary of that kind of deregulation. Is that a fair case?
Yeah, I think it's a fair case, David. Thanks for having me. I think more importantly, the country would be a beneficiary. We talk about some of our largest projects. We build large energy infrastructure for the country, and it can take longer and cost more to permit a project than it does to buy the steel that we install when we build our projects. And so when you think about lowering costs for consumers and getting back to building as a country, winning the race for infrastructure and ultimately for this next generation of technology, it's a huge opportunity, not just for companies like ours, but frankly for our country.
Speaking of our country and the production of LNG in particular, we speak here often about the needs for all the data centers and what's going to power them. And obviously, natural gas does that, and there's an enormous need there. And then we've got this new deal with the EU, in which, at least on paper, it says we're going to sell them, or they're going to buy as much as $250 billion a year worth. Do we have enough, given the export demand, potentially, not to mention what we need domestically?
Yeah, we do. I mean, the U.S. producer has really brought an incredible opportunity for us as a country to produce American energy, low cost. Natural gas on an MMBTU equivalent is 4 times cheaper than a barrel of oil. And so, we have the ability to produce the lowest cost energy on the planet. And what we've shown here in the United States is natural gas has been the most powerful decarbonization tool that we have. We've driven down emissions in the U.S. by displacing high emissions fuels. And so we do have enough supply here in the United States, and I think really recognized globally as an important tool to help us meet the world's need for clean, affordable, reliable energy, but also lower emissions around the world.
Yeah, I mentioned data centers, and I think you guys recently announced something called the Socrates Power Solutions Facilities Project. I want to make sure I get that right. But about $1.6 billion for behind the meter. I think Meta, for example, is one of the first users in Albany, Ohio. Now you're a midstream natural gas pipeline company. So what are the benefits and or the risks of sort of venturing into this business?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, natural gas, clean, affordable, reliable, but also we've seen this emergence of the need for speed. I mean, the race for AI, the race for the next generation of technology is on, and it's a race that we as a country can't afford to lose. And so we know that the most dispatchable, fastest solution we have to bring power to data centers here in the United States is going to be US produced natural gas. And so we're not only working to enhance the infrastructure across our entire footprint, but we're meeting the customers where they have their needs. And you mentioned the first project that we've announced, our Project Socrates. I mean, this will be a utility scale power generation facility that we will bring online in under 18 months in order to power one of our country's most important artificial intelligence centers here in the United States. So American produced energy, and we're going to deliver that in under 18 months so that we can win the race for AI. And it's something that I think as a country, we need to take note. It's become increasingly difficult to build infrastructure in the United States, but luckily there are still some places where we can bring speed to market. But I think increasingly there's a recognition that natural gas and natural gas infrastructure are going to be absolutely critical to us competing and ultimately winning the race for AI.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get resveratrol. Resveratrol is an antioxidant. It's going to soak up free radicals. Resveratrol also helps the health of your mitochondria, so you have more energy. You need ATP in your cells. By reducing the stress in the cell, by reducing those free radicals, the cell will be healthier. And resveratrol helps with youthful gene expression, gets rid of senescent cells. Take it every day. I've been taking resveratrol for decades. Really important. It stacks well with C60, with clarity factor, ubiquinol, NAD+. It's a great supplement to take. And you can also take it with vitamin B complex. Vitamin B complex, the first 4 B vitamins, helps the health of the mitochondria. Boosts up the generation of the ATP through the electron transport chain. That's the main mechanism to produce ATP. So the first 4 B vitamins are super important for that. Also, B vitamins are important for cellular metabolism. And B complex will help to protect your neurons. B12 is super important for neuroprotection. So remember what I said. Take the NAD+ and take the ubiquinol, take vitamin B complex. Those are all neuroprotective, super important. Stacks really well with resveratrol. So a good stack, resveratrol and vitamin B complex. Another great stack with that is to detoxify your body regularly. And you can do that through zeolite. Zeolite is going to bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. By taking 3 small drops underneath your tongue and drinking filtered water, do that every day, you're helping to detoxify your body, including PFAS and PFAS. All right, so that's the forever chemicals. You can get rid of those, but you also have to reduce your exposure. And you reduce your exposure, how? By cleaning your environment at home, staying away from these heavy chemicals, paints, and cleaning supplies. If you need those in your home or in your garage or in your basement, then put them in a double layer, like a container that has 2-layer system, like a container within a container. All right, and that way you're reducing the degassing of these chemicals into your air, so it prevents you from breathing them in. Drinking filtered water and staying away from processed foods. But detoxifying with zeolite, you can do it every day. Now, if you want a heavier detox with zeolite, take about 10 small drops underneath your tongue, drink the filtered water, do that daily until the bottle is done, and do that once or twice a year. I recommend to do it every day using the 3-drop method, the small drops. So please go to my store and get the zeolite. It's very important to detoxify your body. So a great stack to detoxify your body is to take the zeolite, get the vitamin B complex to help with neuroprotection and boost up those energy levels, and resveratrol to have the youthful gene expression. It's a great stack. So please go to my store, use discount 5, get $5 off any order. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
So if it's not Kamala Harris, who is it? These are some of the young progressives in the party on who should lead Democrats.
I really like AOC. Unfortunately, I would like to see her stand, like, be more vocal about Palestine. But other than that, I really think that she should be the leader of the Democratic Party, as she is a Democratic socialist. Being also a young person, a young voter, a college student, seeing people like Zohran Mamdani, AOC just gaining so much more footing and so much more recognition in the policy field is very empowering.
I think candidates like Zohran Mamdani and AOC are really inspiring to see. They,
No, let me get this straight. So this was in Washington on July 25th. This year, okay? What was the common theme that we just heard? And we're only 34 seconds into this video. That is 5 minutes and 41 seconds. I'm a young college student. I'm a young voter. And I want socialism. I want collectivism. Obviously, just the beginning of their sentence, I'm young, blah, 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 is basically warning you they have no experience. They have no understanding of what they want. They know they have a problem, affordability, getting a job, but they don't understand the answer. You know why? Because they didn't read Ayn Rand. And Ayn Rand, through Atlas Shrugged, warned everybody, don't pick collectivism. Pick individualism. But these young voters, young college students, they didn't learn from history.
And as I'm here, it's so inspiring to see. And so I think that someone like that in 2028 can carry a lot of momentum. I think people are so excited.
So
let me get this straight. Let me get this straight. All right. We have DEI in college with a bunch of people that don't know their history, and they find it so inspiring that someone of a minority descent, or let me rephrase it, be not so politically correct, they're focused on a candidate that's not white, all right? Not a male and not white, all right? And they're so inspired by the socialism of AOC and so inspired with the communism of Mamdani. They're so inspired. But yet they have no baseline of understanding of what they're voting. None. Why? Because they don't understand history. They didn't understand that there were warning signs that literature out there throughout many decades have been warning people, do not go down this path, but we need to experiment. But why do you need to experiment if all you got to do is read a book? Why? Why? Why do you need to experiment with Mamdani when Ayn Rand literally told you what will happen? Well, that's a big book. We can't read that. That's what they're saying. They don't have the attention span to read it. But they're willing to do all these experiments that will fail because many other societies have tried this, but they don't know that because they don't read. They don't know their history. They're a young voter. Young, dumb voter.
They're about nothing's changed, no lessons learned. Right. It's resist Donald Trump and move as far left as possible. The Democrat Party, AOC and others seem to be still getting the attention.
Yeah, and that's where all of the energy is for them. Look, losing states, it's the worst. And when you lose, everybody's a loser. You know, you look backwards and you see Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, and they're both losers. And you start seeing them start like carping back and forth. And then you look forward and you have AOC and Mamdani and others who are part of the truly radical, crazy left-wing fringe of the party that, you know, say what you want to about somebody like Nancy Pelosi. She was very effective at keeping the fringe part of her candidate, of her party under wraps. As she kind of rides off the sunset, Chuck Schumer is left. he doesn't know what to do. He has no ability to keep this fringe under wraps. And that's where all the energy is. That's where all the excitement is. The problem is when you get outside of the party, there isn't a broad, widespread general election support for this crazy nonsense. Full-blown communism here in New York City.
Well, you're right, Charlie. I think what this new generation of socialist Marxists, what they do very well.
I'm living in a city, New York City, that's full-blown communism. If Mondami gets in, it's going to destroy the heartbeat of America. The heartbeat of America from back to, going all the way back to 1624? When the Dutch bought Manhattan for blue shells. I think it was like 24 of them or whatever it was. That's been the heartbeat of the country. Boom, 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 boom. And with finance, way back when it was commerce, right? And also industry. But there's this heartbeat. But if you get socialism in to New York, and it takes hold and it starts to destroy that heart, and that heart gets sclerotic and clogged, and it can't pump anymore, and it loses its ability to contract. And guess what? America will be a patient with heart failure. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. Why? Because it's dual purpose. It will help with your skin. It will help with your hair and nails. It will help with your musculature and your tendons and your ligaments, your joints, your cartilage. Take it every day. Mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with just milk. I mix it with soft foods. Take it every day. And when you do resistance training, it's going to help with your musculature. It's going to help with your joint health. And again, by taking it every day, you're going to help with your skin. Super important to take. Buy my products so we can fight the communist push in New York City.
They diagnose the problem very well. When they talk about affordability, and they say, you should, the quality of healthcare, even what's happening in Gaza, they say the children should not be dying. Of course, they don't say Hamas is responsible for a lot of the deaths there. Many of the solutions are so jacked up, but they do a great job in telling the American people, I understand your pain. Kind of, in effect, like Donald Trump, addressing the working class, people that feel forgotten in America. His solution is different. Bill Maher has a warning for the Democrats. So, okay, yeah, these young people are crafty, they're inspirational. But if you run these people, the GOP will win the next election. Watch.
Do you think that he would have the power and influence to be able to, usher in socialism?
He definitely has the power and influence to elect J.D. Vance or whoever is the Republican candidate next time. It is a walking commercial for the Republican Party national agenda. When you let the Democrat socialists, and now they're actually calling themselves social, when you let them take over a major American city, this is what you get.
If you're engaging with a psycho who all they care about is controlling you, they're very good at diagnosing problems. They're very good at figuring out what your weak points are. And that's, I would argue, what a lot of these people are doing. So
I have an international audience. Some people in Britain listen to me. In the UK, guess what? If Mondami gets elected as mayor for New York City, New York is going to turn into London. And London's a shithole.
Recognize that if you can focus on these problems, then you can, use that dissatisfaction to gain power for yourself.
When I see his face, I think immediately of his pitch for government run, grocery store. And I don't think there's any reasonable American who hears that and thinks that that's something that will work for them and their families.
But he's winning. And all of the polls right now, if you take Sliwa out of the polling, he still wins. If you take Adams out of the polling, he still wins. If you take Cuomo out of the polling, he still wins in New York City. This is supposed to be the financial capital of the world, and people are willing to elect a socialist. And, you know, I don't want him to win. I hope people wake up, but I think this will be the next mayor of New York. And the question is, what are we going to do about it?
It'll be terrible for New York City, but Republicans will be able to run on this issue for as long as that guy's around.
Yeah.
It's going to be a huge boon for Republicans and conservatives around the country, and New York City is going to pay them.
I will say this finally, when it comes to Bill Maher, it is so refreshing to see, once you remove the TDS, the Trump derangements, how you're able to look at the landscape and think logically. Right. Bill Maher is still liberal. He's still a Democrat at heart. But he looks at the debt much differently now that he's met the president. He sees what's happening in the country. The liberals can recover. They can find some type of candidate, but they got to stop focusing on Donald Trump. You can't look at every single issue and look at the president. You got to have your own policy prescriptions. And so now he's warning them, guys, if you do this, you may get a temporary sugar high because this is this crazy leftist, but you can't run a candidate like that nationally. People don't like you taking their money.
Yeah.
This is still America.
If Bill Maher can see it, it must be obvious.
Yep.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brighteon Channel.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And clip.
Now, for the ones that are listening or watching, I'm reading a book called Inflated. It's about money, debt, and the American dream. All right. This was published in 2025, I believe. Yes, it was published this year by Christopher Whalen, Dr. Whalen. And Dr. Whalen is the Dr. Whalen. I think he's Dr. Whalen. And he is an investment banker and the chairman of Whalen Global Advisors. Focuses on financial services, mortgage finance, and technology sectors. All right. And he's a writer and financial professional in Washington, New York, and London. So, you know, he wrote this book, and it's about the American debt and the rise of the dollar, the fall of the dollar, the increasing of the debt in the United States, the increasing of the debt to GDP ratio, and goes through Federal Reserve, through the Federal Reserve, the different presidents. It's a really good book. All right. It's a scholarly work. All right. So, you know, you got to understand it's not a quick, I wouldn't say it's a quick read, but I wouldn't say that it's a difficult read either. I would say it's moderate. It's a moderate read. Now, what is interesting is that about halfway into the book, he talks about the New Deal. All right, there's a chapter called The New Deal to the Cold War. And it's dealing with Roosevelt, FDR, all right? Now, FDR, during that time period, there was in New York, there was this push for progressivism, all right? And he represented that. And this whole New Deal and doing things to experiment with the economy and all this stuff, all right? This is pre-Atlas Shrugged, all right? Before Ayn Rand was able to get to the United States and write the book, all right? I think Ayn Rand was already born during this time period, all right? So she was living in the Soviet Union. But many aspects to FDR was taking certain aspects of the New Deal that were borrowed from Mussolini and from Nazi Germany. All right, these socialistic ideas that were happening in the 20s. Now you got to remember what the context was at the time. Socialism was starting to become a new, you know, a new aspect to politics, especially when economies were failing. You had Karl Marx and Lenin, right? You had Hitler pushing for socialism. You had Mussolini, all right? So FDR borrowed from Karl Marx, Lenin, Mussolini, and Hitler, and constructed some of these, quote, New Deal, the New Deal, all right? It was an experimentation to rewrite capitalism, turn it more socialistic, more progressive. And because FDR was tied to New York, right, and there was a progressiveness that was coming out of New York, and there was the collapse of the economy because of the Great Depression under Hoover, that it led to FDR to get in and experiment with these policies. But they were already in the making before the collapse of the crash of 1929. All right? They were already in discussion within certain political groups. This is worrisome because there's a similarity that's taking place here. There's a similarity between progressives today, or what they call, they're literally calling democratic socialists, and FDR. Now, if we have a major financial collapse, then the chances of something like this percolating up into the mainstream as a president, that probability is increasing. Now, why do I say this? I say this because I'm all about fib sequences, right? People that pay attention, there's a theme of history and of finance and of price action. Even the development of the body, if you look at an embryo and how it develops into a fetus, it's a fib sequence, it's a golden ratio. The rotation of our solar system and tied with the galaxies and how galaxies rotate in superclusters. Those are all fib sequences, Fibonacci sequences, going all the way back to the Big Bang. So many parts of nature can be modeled using mathematics of fractals. Okay, now history can be modeled with fractals. In 1908, there was a financial crash that was tied to derivatives, a financial engineering. They didn't use the terms during those times, but in 1908, all right, there was the Knickerbocker Trust that was borrowing money and issuing debts, and eventually it collapsed. All right, so it was a kind of financial engineering of the time, and it was tied to the railroads. All right, and there were these trusts that were taking in money, issuing debt, and eventually defaulting on the debt. It became so pervasive that it created a crash, a financial crash. This is pre-Federal Reserve. That was 1908. 100 years later, what's 100 years later? 2008. When was Lehman? See the fib sequence? See the rhyme of history? Now, fast forward, and what was the commonality? The years, or 100-year difference. And you have financial engineering that caused the problem. Over speculation. Taking risk off the balance sheet and creating, or how should I say, creating a situation where you think you can leverage the economy and grow faster. All right? Those were the common similarities between 1908 and 2008. Now, you go to 2000, if you go to 1918, what was happening? It was near the end of the war, and you had the Spanish flu. Fast forward 100 years, roughly. What do you have? 2019. You have a pandemic. Now, something similar, there's another theme that's coming along here. All right. What happened in 1929? The crash. I suspect that we are moving towards a danger point within our economy because of AI and because of an exuberance of this productivity gain that we'll have from AI. That in 2029, we're going to have a major crash. That's the likes of the Great Depression. The question is, what happens after that? Because during the Great Depression, we didn't have computerization. We had electrification, but we didn't have computerization. So is there a new dynamic here? We have to wait. But if I'm right, this fib sequence is repeating, and that we are in a danger zone in 2029. All right. Now, a lot of people are saying singularity is maybe, or I shouldn't say the singularity, that artificial intelligence is going to really leapfrog and have super intelligence level in the near term, or human intelligence level in the near term. Musk has been saying 2027. It takes a couple of years for it to be implemented. Plus or minus a couple of years. So 2029 is a danger zone. Maybe 2030, but somewhere in there, it's danger. So we have to pay attention. All right, what's going on here? I think it's a very important point that there are lessons to be learned on what happened in the 20s. There are lessons that especially with progressives. So as people are getting laid off, maybe progressivism starts to go up. So we may have capitalism as we know it today from 2025 to 2029, 2030. There's a major crash, and there's enough young people that are pushing at the grassroots level this progressivism, this social democratic socialism in inner cities like New York, that when the crash happens, it brings up them into the mainstream and the presidential stage. That's what I worry about. Now, you don't believe me, just look at the history. That's similar to what happened with FDR. So we got to pay attention here. Now, what is also interesting is that it led for us to, we had major deflation. That's the depression, the Great Depression, a major deflation. There was the buying of gold and getting off of the gold standard. And it was borrowed money to buy the gold. That's what FDR was doing. That shift was taking place when he took office, which was in 1932. All right, so there was the shift in the gold standard for the United States between 1932 to 1933. All right. Well, is something similar going to happen with the whole digital currency, where we no longer have dollars and coinage, but we have a major crash in, let's say, 2029, and we have a new president that comes in. All right, so we have a president. The next presidential election is going to be 2028. The crash happens in 2029. So you don't have it until 2032 before you have a shift to the opposite party, which will be progressive. So most likely the Republicans will win the presidency in 2028. The crash happens in 2032. Social Democrats come in and push this New Deal on steroids. And there is something happens with the currency where we no longer are the fiat currency that we know of today. We're of some sort of digital currency that is through central planning, that is top down and and controlling of civil liberties, what I call the Bio-Patriot Act. All right. But this is all kind of playing out, and it falls in line with this fib sequence. Now, it's fascinating why that is. You know, why, you know, if you want to like dive into the details of it, why is this theme of a fib sequence with history? I don't know. Maybe that is just the spark of God. I don't know. But the thing is that there's something boiling under the surface that's going to manifest itself in 2029 and the years and the years subsequently after that I think is going to usher in democratic socialism. All right. With that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Purchase my products so we can fight socialism. All right. All kidding aside, I take C60. I've been taking it since 2016. All right. I take C60 every day, take a teaspoon a day. And what that does is it soaks up free radicals, brings down the stress of the cell, and helps the health of the mitochondria so you have more energy. It also absorbs those free radicals that are floating in your bloodstream. By absorbing those free radicals in your bloodstream, you're reducing the chances of reduced LDL, because oxidized LDL causes plaque. Well, if you soak up those free radicals, you're reducing the chances of oxidized LDL because the free radicals aren't there. And when you don't have oxidized LDL, you have less plaque buildup. So it helps with your vascular system too. It helps with your other cells, somatic cells, reducing stress and boosting up the ATP. In addition, it helps the neurons. You need healthy mitochondria in your neurons to produce the ATP so you can create the neurotransmitters. And when you have less stress in the neuron, the myelin sheath is healthy. And when you have a good myelin sheath, you have that signal between the synaptic and the postsynaptic neuron, and so you have communication. So when that whole network is healthy for your neurons, you have better cognition, you have better kinematics. Very important for healthy neurons. So please take C60. You can get it in MCT coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, and you can also get it in avocado oil. Take a teaspoon a day every day. And it's a major pillar to slow down the aging process and to improve your tissues, the tissue health. And when you improve the tissue health, you're improving your organ health. And by improving your organ health, that means your immune system is going to get better, your glands are going to get better, your endocrine system is going to get better. So it's super important to take. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It is cheaper to purchase the higher ounce configuration. But take it every day. It's a super important. It's very potent, more potent than any other antioxidant. So please take this every day, and you can stack it with resveratrol, ubiquinol, NAD+. It stacks well with turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans. I have this protocol that if you follow, I call it the core. So you have a foundation. That foundation is multivitamin and the probiotics, and you build off of that by taking the core. The core is taking max 35, max 14, or cleanse. That's going to help with your immune system. The second pillar is the C60. That's going to soak up free radicals. The third pillar is the turmeric, the ashwagandha, and the lignans. That's going to help boost up your immune system, help with the cardiovascular system. And the fourth pillar is to boost up your metabolism and increase your energy levels. And that's through Boomer Boost. By doing that every day and doing some of the other things like proper diet, exercise, proper sleep, learning new things, reading, writing, talking to people, proper mindfulness, try staying positive, either through spirituality, meditation. There's many ways to do this, right? But if you do that holistically, you're going to slow down the aging process. And when you do have a problem, at least you have more energy and you're building that buffer to be able to allow your body to heal. All right. Now, sometimes you may need pharmacopoeia. Maybe you need a surgery or whatever. But the thing is that if you build your body in a holistic way and slow down the aging process, you'll be able to weather the storm. You're going to be able to weather and heal when you go through those surgeries or when you go through a sickness or whatever, right? If you have a poor immune system or you're unhealthy and you need a surgery for whatever reason, you're not going to recover as quickly. But if you're healthy, you bounce back quicker. You look at someone that's young, and it's amazing how fast kids can heal, right? Well, you can kind of take some of that and apply it in your older years, in your adulthood years, by doing this protocol, by proper supplementation, proper diet and exercise, mindfulness. It's a holistic approach. If your body's healthy, you're reducing the chances of things breaking down. But if you do have something that breaks down, or you do, need to go through, some sort of more invasive method, your body can heal quicker versus someone that's unhealthy. All right? So pay attention. It works. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and follow my advice and take the protocol. All right, with that, let's listen in a little bit about this Texas House. Republicans issue warrants for absentee Dems. Because this is the redistricting. They wanted to redistrict Texas, so the Democrats ran away and went to Chicago. Now, because they didn't want a quorum to be able to vote, right? So let's listen in here.
Empty seats at the State House in Texas, with state Democrats there now on the run.
If one side is intent on cheating, then the other side has to respond.
The Democrats in Texas are trying to deny a quorum to Republicans to block legislative action to redraw congressional seats there and potentially add 5 Republicans to Congress. They have fled to states like Illinois, Massachusetts, and New York. And some of those Democratic governors are threatening redistricting their own states to fight back.
I have news flash for Republicans in Texas. This is no longer the Wild West. We're not going to tolerate our democracy being stolen in a modern-day stagecoach hoist by a bunch of law-breaking cowboys.
And with Republicans now barely in control of the U.S. House.
Let me get this straight. Hochul, who was just speaking, Governor Hochul of New York, wants illegal immigration and eventually amnesty so they can maintain the seats in Congress, because New York State and New York City is losing population. People are moving out. They need the illegal aliens, 1, to have slave labor, 2, to get funding for their school system, and 3, to eventually have amnesty and have citizens voting in New York that are Democrats, so they maintain power in Congress. So it is the Wild West still, Governor Hochul, and you're contributing to it.
Do want to bring in Attorney Jeremy Rosenthal, who is in Texas right now. And Jeremy, as always, we appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thank you, Stephanie. Not in Chicago, in Texas.
Yes, absolutely. In Texas, right there in Austin, as we take a live look right there of the capital of Austin, Texas. So I wanted to start with this because now there have been orders to issue a civil arrest warrants for any Democratic representative who is currently absent. Can you break down the difference for our viewers in terms of what a civil arrest is and how that is different from a criminal arrest?
These are far, far different animals than one another. A criminal arrest warrant is a warrant to take somebody into custody and to bring them functionally in front of a magistrate, to put them in jail. That's what a criminal arrest warrant is. This is more of an angry letter, and it would authorize somebody in Texas to take a person and bring them to the legislature is functionally what it would do. It's a specific directive. It's created by the legislature in the Texas Constitution, and it allows an officer to bring them to the Capitol to the session. But what it doesn't do is where the criminal warrant would reach across state lines with the full faith and credit clause to the United States Constitution. Civil warrant doesn't do that. It ends at the state line, so it really doesn't. It doesn't solve any issue. It doesn't. There's no legal way to compel the Texas lawmakers currently in Illinois to come to Austin through that mechanism. It's tantamount to an angry letter.
So let's say that the Democrats then decide to return to the state of Texas right there. Would they be then detained if they cross back into state lines?
If they do so during this session, which a special session by law lasts 30 days, I think we're sometime into it. If they return during the session, they could be taken at that point involuntarily back to the legislature. That could happen if they were to return. One of the unique things about the Texas legislature is that our legislators are civilians. They're not full time. Our legislator is they're in session once every 2 years. And their session just ended this last June, and then the governor has the ability to call special sessions after this. But our representatives are people who work in the community. These are lawyers, accountants, shopkeepers, anything and everything under the sun, and they need full-time paychecks. They have mortgages, they have mouths to feed, they have loans to pay off. Everything that you and I deal with on a daily basis, so do they. And the legislature is not their source of income. So to take them away from their job really kind of hurts. And that's why the Democratic representatives being in Chicago still kind of hurt them. And what I would expect is that Greg Abbott's going to call another legislative session after this one ends. And whether the Democrats go somewhere else at that point, whether they stay away from their homes and their jobs and their families, that's what we keep our eye on here.
So, when we take a look at from that legal standpoint, they can't be compelled. The law, doesn't allow Governor Abbott to compel them to return, but I imagine they will have to at some point. And when you issue a civil arrest warrant, can the governor then say, never mind, and remove it? Or how does that process work? Is there a statute of limitations on that, or does time run out?
I believe it's commensurate with the legislative session. So once the session's over, I think the warrant goes poof. Now, the governor can certainly bargain with it, and he can try to talk across party lines and try to talk to individuals in the Democratic Party to say, okay, here's what we'll do if you come home. I'll make this warrant go away. And to put it to you like this, breaking quorum is as old as democracy. And think of it like a filibuster, or think of it like a point of procedure. It's a frustrating tactic that a minority will use in a legislative process to try to equalize the balance. And the question is well, how do you end the filibuster? Well, you can wait it out, or you can try to negotiate your way out of it. And this is really no different. Legally, the Democrats in Illinois have broken no civil rules, and they've broken no criminal laws by doing so. So what they've got effectively is a bargaining chip that they can try to leverage for something that maybe they want to have happen, and maybe the governor entertains that, and maybe he doesn't. But what we're witnessing now is really kind of a lot of theater.
And part of that theater is, the accusations perhaps of bribery, right? That people are donating and paying for the fines, perhaps, that the Democratic state lawmakers are accruing right there. When it comes to that particular charge, does that hold any weight legally?
It's really hard to fathom. And even Ken Paxton said that that's going to be a challenge to try to prove. The Texas has somewhat liberal bribery laws, meaning that if a public official takes anything in exchange for something of benefit, then they're guilty of bribery. But you got to remember, these are all politicians. And when you're talking about a lawmaker who is using somebody else's money, using campaign money, using that to go travel somewhere, who's to say that that's not a legitimate expenditure? And all of these lawmakers look at themselves in the mirror and think, oh my gosh, did I do that? Have I done something like that? Also, our judges are elected. So bribery cases that involve money that goes to politicians, that's not buying a brand new swimming pool. That's not buying a brand new car. That's not cash under the table. A lot of our lawmakers, a lot of our judges really, when push comes to shove on those types of charges, get very squeamish about it. And the genesis here is political, and I think everybody would see that. So I don't know that the lawmakers in the Democrats in Chicago, I don't know that they're really afraid of that one. Again, that's just kind of part of the theater. Even when Ken Paxton is telling you it's going to be hard for me to prosecute, you know it's really hard.
And Jeremy, as always, we appreciate you taking the time to join us. This is certainly a very interesting issue right here, politics and the legalities of all. We appreciate you taking.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. Heirloom barley will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. Take it every day. It's a protein. It's a high-density protein. It's a powder. You mix it with soft foods, filtered water, milk, a smoothie. Take it every day. It's a great way to detox and bring down inflammation. In addition, I also have Gladiator barley. You get all the benefits of heirloom barley in Gladiator barley, but you get one additional benefit, and that is it'll help to build muscle. So if you're doing resistance training and you need to bring down inflammation, and detoxify your body, soak up free radicals, Gladiator barley is a great way to do that. It stacks really well with Boomer Boost and Myotrol. Again, Myotrol on my store helps the gene expression to build muscle. So Gladiator barley is a great way to get healthy, detoxify your body, and build muscle. It's for males and females. Take it every day. Now let's listen to Balance of Power from Bloomberg.
The Biden administration. She's now Senior Managing Director and Chief Strategist of International Political Affairs and Public Policy at Evercore ISI. Sarah, welcome back to Bloomberg TV and radio. If we could just begin with what was a very big number put out by the president today, the suggestion that tariffs on pharmaceuticals, when and if they are announced, could ultimately go as high as 250%, just not immediately, to allow for some more onshoring as high as 250%, just not immediately, to allow for some more onshoring of that industry here in the United States. How long of a window do you really need to leave to allow that kind of supply chain reorientation to happen? Will 250% tariffs, the threat of it, actually make a difference on, say, things like drug prices that American people are faced with at the pharmacy?
Well, 250 is certainly a very, very big number. And it's particularly interesting because in the EU agreement, the EU sends the United States a lot of the drugs that we get. They were given a 15% from the president on pharma. Mm-hmm. So a lot of confusion about exactly what the president is solving for. Relocating a manufacturing facility or building one in the United States is very, very time-consuming and expensive. You need to get FDA approval, among other things. I think it'll be interesting to see what part of the drug.
Heaven forbid we actually reboot our pharmaceutical industry in the United States instead of buying pharmacopoeia from China.
Supply chain is the president looking for. There's all the way down from the very basic inputs.
Here's the problem. Former deputy of U.S. Trade Representative. What do you hear from her fucking mouth? Can't do, can't do, can't do. Too expensive, too much regulation. Can't do, can't do, can't do. What is the little phrase in American? I can, not I can't.
generic drugs, many of those come from India, to some of the more advanced drugs from the EU. So I think we have a lot to learn from the president about exactly what he is seeking to achieve here.
Interesting. We're talking about, to your point, two very specialized industries. And you've already expressed that when it comes to pharma. When you talk about chips as well, it takes a very long time to build a chip foundry. And there seems to be an expectation in the White House that these things can happen, including auto manufacturing back in the US, very quickly. You throw a switch and we're making iPhones here in the United States. What would be more difficult to reshore, chips or pharmaceuticals?
Well, they're both very, very, very challenging. Their chips may be even more complex, but they're both very, very difficult, and not totally clear that there will be a cost advantage of doing that. I think with the chips investigation, really what I'm looking for is how much is the president looking to just tariff the chips themselves that come in? That's more in the $50 billion range. Or how wide is he willing to go with products that have chips in them? In that case, you can get to about 300 billion of imports. So what I'm really looking for on the chips is to see how much of the derivative products is he looking for. And if not, again, you might find that what the tariffs encourage is countries to send chips to other places first and have them embedded in a product and then come to the US. So how these tariffs are designed makes a big difference in how the industry responds.
Well, as you talk about chips being embedded in other products, it reminds me of the idea of where things are originating, in what form or from where they ultimately come to the United States. Knowing, Sarah, part of what is set to be collected beginning August 7th is also a 40% tariff on transshipped goods, though we've lacked a great deal of clarity as to how exactly those rules would be designed, how they would be tracked and implemented. What is your expectation? How difficult is it actually to get accurate transshipment information and charge a levy accordingly?
Well, you have to just, it's very difficult. What you have to first do is decide, again, what are you trying to solve for? There are some areas where
Let me get this straight. You can't put a barcode and track it as it's going against, over the borders. So, for example, it's made in Canada. You track it through a barcode, and it comes to the United States. Something's done to it, and then maybe it goes to Mexico for something else. You track it again, and it comes back to final assembly in the United States. Now, there's many different other ways that this could play out with the permutations. But the point here is that you just use a little laser gun and you hit the barcode, just like what you would do if you're buying something from Home Depot in the self-checkout. But it's really hard because it's "I can't" from Sarah, the former deputy of the U.S. Trade Representative. Because it's "I can't" instead of "I can."
Now where things come, say, from China, and they really aren't transformed much in another country, and then they make it on their way to the United States. That kind of crackdown is really just working, is just more of a customs enforcement thing than anything else. But alternatively, the president could be looking for something like, well, what about a Chinese factory that's fully built in Vietnam, in Mexico? This is something that the Biden administration looked at around steel. We started to see more steel, Chinese steel coming in from Mexico. Or are you trying to solve for BYD? You really have to define here, what problem am I solving for? Am I literally talking about ending Chinese ownership? And then design your policy accordingly. And transshipment is one where the definitions could certainly run the gamut.
Interesting data today as we find the U.S. trade deficit narrowed in June to the tightest since September of 2023. It is happening. Trade gap down 16% from the prior month to just over $60 billion, lower than expected. To what extent will this trend continue?
Well, certainly, if you tariff things at very high rates, you do get less of them. And particularly while remember over this period, we've had a lot of different policies in place, and we had some pre-ordering that happened in advance of the month that could be. So I would say I'd want to see the data for a few more months to see if we can cut out some of the noise as the policy has adjusted. But in general, yeah, we should see the trade deficit down. That's obviously a metric that this administration cares a lot about. There's a lot of other metrics that are relevant as well, but on this one, sure, the trade deficit should marginally come down.
Well, and we know that deficits in many ways factor into the calculations the administration has made when setting tariff rates on individual countries. Sarah, to what extent should we expect a dramatic reduction in those actual structural deficits or surpluses, depending obviously on what country we're talking about? Is this an achievable aim to try to bring all of those down substantially?
It really depends. I mean, one of the reasons a lot of people don't just look at trade deficits across the board as a meaningful metric, even though this administration takes them quite seriously, is it can tell you a lot of different things about what's going on. So, for example, from Canada, we get a lot of energy in the United States, pretty cost effective. That's one that's been exempted from some of the tariffs. So that deficit should persist. I think that's probably good for both economies. In other places where we were talking about, the Swiss, sure, they're going to send a lot more things. So it really depends on the country. It depends what composition of their exports to the U.S. are sectoral. But certainly places that are looking to divert to other markets to the degree that there's demand, because this is an expensive way to go. So it may not be that the United States is necessarily exporting anymore to that country, but rather they're just sending their goods elsewhere.
Sure. Sorry, Sarah. We were talking earlier about the deadline at the end of the week that the president has put on Russia for secondary sanctions, which sometimes he refers to as tariffs. If that in fact happens, does that jeopardize our potential to make a trade deal with China, or does it hasten an opportunity?
Well, I think there's a lot riding on the trade deal with China, and the administration does seem quite nervous about the potential for China to take additional action or revert to some of the action we've seen on rare earths. So I think they're going to try to not really disrupt that negotiation going into August 12th. So we'll see what he does on this oil front. It shouldn't be a huge, but I don't think he's looking to escalate with China. Certainly, it's also an issue with India, where he's been trying to land a deal that's gone a bit sideways of late. So certainly impacts if he goes there. But again, my expectation is that the administration is looking to keep China from not escalating at this point. And my base case is they'll do policy accordingly.
It's good to have you back as always, Sarah. Evercore, I am
not impressed. Oh, and she works for Evercore. Something? Did I hear that right? Did she work for Evercore? So a former trade representative working in finance, pushing an agenda, free trade, pushing the agenda of shipping your jobs overseas and importing products and services. Who benefits from that? The consumer, really? Or is it the ones that are pushing paper? Now think about that for a second. The ones that are pushing paper are the ones that make more, and the ones that are pushing the paper are the ones that are in power. So they don't want to hear that you're going to move their cheese. They don't want to hear that you took their cheese away. They don't want to hear that you want to bring back jobs to the United States, because they were making a boatload of money by having goods and services being imported into the United States, having a deficit, selling bonds to the foreign nations, and getting a cut of that. So they want a flow of FDI into the United States through bond purchases, but not so much foreign direct investment going in to actually build manufacturing facilities here. Because if you're building products here, then who's going to buy that debt? Who's really going to buy that debt? It's not going to be foreigners because they're not selling any products to the United States. See the issue? See the issue now? And that's what Sarah represents. Worked in government, knows who the key players are, goes into finance, and pushes an agenda. What's the agenda? Free trade, not for the United States producers, but so you can buy cheap spatulas at Walmart and make the Walmart family even richer. Now do you get the problem? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. Why? Because you're going to need energy to fight the new world order. So please go get the Boomer Boost from my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It has 68 nutrients. What does this do? It's dual purpose. You should be taking this every day. It's a powder. You mix it with soft foods. I mix it with hummus. You just saw me eat the hummus because this is a professional show. And by taking this, you can mix it with just milk or a smoothie or just with water, but I prefer it in soft foods like hummus or yogurt. But it has 68 nutrients, and it focuses on a few systems in your body. It'll help to rev up your metabolism and boost up those energy levels. It'll help with cardiovascular health and your brain function. Get rid of that brain fog, be able to concentrate, be able to sleep better. And what you're going to notice is that you're going to have more vitality. And you're going to want to move around. You're going to want to be active. And you'll get positive externalities when you're more active. If you just sit in a chair or sitting on the couch, you're just going to get fat. And you're going to atrophy. And you're going to get unhealthy. You're going to have poor blood flow. Your legs are going to swell. Right? But if you're moving around, you have more musculature, you have better bone density, you have more active life, more purpose in life. All right? So take Boomer Boost, be active. Now, this will also couple really well with gladiator barley or heirloom barley. By coupling them together, it's going to help to control your A1C levels. You know what that means? It means controlling diabetes. Many people in the United States, the two biggest diseases in the United States, let's go with three biggest diseases. The three biggest diseases in the United States isn't because of genetics. It's because of lifestyle. It's because of too many Big Macs, too much Coca-Cola, not enough exercise. Heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. And most of them, most of the patients, it's because it's self-induced, because of poor lifestyle choices. Now, some cases it's genetic, sometimes it's just a random event, but in most cases in the United States, and this is a fact that most Americans don't want to admit to, they don't want to look in the mirror and say they're the cause, it's because they chose a lifestyle that led to disease. And you can reverse it up to a point. If you go over the threshold, maybe it's too late. But if you take Boomer Boost and you take the gladiator barley or the heirloom barley together, it's going to help to control your A1C levels. There's too many people in the United States that have diabetes or borderline diabetic. You need to lose the weight. You need to get healthy. Stop eating the sugary foods. Stop eating the processed foods. Eat healthier. Move around. Proper diet and exercise. Proper supplementation. When you do this, you're going to get healthier. It's that simple, but you have to take charge of your own health. Because if you don't, guess what? No one else will. And so you start to have these diseases, and then all of a sudden you have to take statins, and you have to take heart medication, and all of a sudden it's a downward spiral. A great way to reduce the cost of healthcare in the United States by tens of billions of dollars is for the population to take charge of their own health. And then we'll save so much money in healthcare. Because most of the diseases in the United States are self-induced. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Boomer Boost. Very high quality product. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order if you spend $150 or more. And maybe I'll be nice. If you spend $100 or more, I'll give you a free gift till supplies last. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get healthy, follow my protocol. It's going to slow down the aging process and you're going to have more vitality. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. Again, go to my store, get the great products I have, share the links, make sure you subscribe to all the channels. I appreciate the ones that were watching the live stream. Thank you for also the ones that are going to be watching the replay premieres and the ones that have been listening on X Spaces. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.